that they are real people behind backstage, just so we can actually identify them, please do me that favor. If you're in the back, Neuro Jack, show us that you're a real human here before we end up popping you on, and we can have this discussion. Awesome. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure, you know what I mean? So that's what I do. I'd like to screen people if possible, just to make sure that they're real people, Dalton. We have a couple people in the chat before we bring them on, just to shout out. I think this is someone from your side.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hey, Autumn, good to see you there. Allegedly, Duncan is late.
Duncan. I'm going to screw your name up. I'm telling you, like, it's going to really keep me screwed up. Hi, Baron says, thank you so much for being here. I thought he was taking the week off. I forced him on, so you could thank me later, you know. Bible Guy and Derek, epic combo. Thank you so much. The Jester in the house. Heyo, shalom, yah. I'm happy without Jesus and Yahweh. Someone says, nice, Durbin is on. Welcome. Hey, what's up? Good to see everybody here. Christian, okay. Dalton Morgan, someone said.
Oh, I use a voice changer. Maybe that's what they're referencing to. And one of the voices sounds a lot like Morgan Freeman. Maybe that's what they're referencing to.
Probably. All right, we got people don't know Derek. Yep. Nice to meet you too. To the Bible Guys viewers, audience. Good to see you here. I forced Dalton, so you have to somewhat like me, okay? I forced Dalton to do this stream. All right. Good to see everybody here. I don't want to waste too much time. Let's bring on our guest. Neuro, what's up?
Hey, how are you? How are you, Derek?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you doing this. I've watched you off and on for a few years. I think you did particularly well, you know, talking to like people like Jade Iyer and Andrew Wilson and stuff like that. That's where I first really started watching you, but I've seen you around. I think you bring up interesting points. I definitely don't agree with you, obviously, because I'm a Christian, but I think that you do some very interesting thought experiments. So I appreciate that about you.
I thank you for the compliment. It's interesting. I guess it's whoever you ask, you know, on what they think about how that engagement with. I self-confessedly am not an ortho bro. I don't really care for the arguments. It usually tries to put the burden on the people that they're trying to win an argument with. And it doesn't feel like a sincere approach to really getting at the gospel, getting at the revelation of scripture, really getting at why Christianity. Sure, philosophy is involved no matter what you do, but it's like, feels more like if I'm being frank, dick measuring contest. And I'm just being honest, you know.
Phil bros don't have a sincere bone in their body.
It's hard for me to take them serious when I've seen how the behavior is and that kind of stuff. So, but I do appreciate the compliment. And of course, I do think I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't sincerely think what I'm doing makes the most sense. But being you're a Christian, and thank you for being the first to come on, you know, why should we become a Christian is the question, right? Sincerely, why are you convinced that me or Dalton should become Christians?
So that's a great question, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to answer. So I appreciate you saying that. So I'll put it like this: I'm from your part of the world. Let's put it that way. I grew up in that culture. I now live, you know, on the left coast. That's, you know, very atheistic. You know, so I've seen the difference of mindsets very vividly, I think you'd say. And I'll put it like this: like, I think that, you know, you could agree, at least in some sense of the word, that like where we come from in the world is a very special place where people do strive for morality, and they do strive towards certain higher level virtue, right? Now, is this replicable in other belief systems? I think perhaps to some degree, but it's almost like English, right? Like, so one of my friends says something to the effect that like English is a category of the mind, right? And when people speak English, they start thinking as an Englishman or a Germanic person in some sense, right? Now, I kind of put it that way for Christianity. And for example, like, you're not convinced that Christianity is true in any sort of logical way, but definitely you've seen the fruits of Christian thought. and you're definitely, thinking in the terms of a Christian. And I can see
Well,
that in a lot of your work, if that makes any sense, right?
well, I would say that as someone who spends quite a lot of time talking to Christians on TikTok, a lot of the fruit that I receive from believers is not very good fruit.
Oh, I would 100% agree with you on that. And, and that's a fair point, I think. And I think you guys have done a good job of, exposing a lot of the hypocrisy, and I would say also I'm trying to use the right nice terminology because we're on YouTube, obviously, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing as well, where people just use faith as a shield to guard them from criticism or being judged or something like that. And I think that that is a major problem, right? But I would still argue that, like, on some level, you know, especially if you look at something like Orthodox Christianity, the actual belief structure itself, not necessarily the version of it that we're seeing online. That it is kind of like the standard of morality that's kind of existed in Western civilization for a long period of time. Now, has
If
it been
I may,
abused from the beginning till now? Absolutely. If that
if
makes any sense.
if I may just let me make sure I'm not hearing any background noise here. If I may just chime in here just to say, like, one of the things I've done with my deconstructing, I would just say my heightening of my skepticism and why the threshold for believing in Christianity has gone up is, I don't know if you've been paying attention. There's a debate happening right now between Matt Dillahunty, Alex O'Connor, and another philosopher over, are claims equal to evidence? And, like, this is a philosophical debate that's going on between these guys, and one side thinks they're right, and the other side thinks they're right. And is testimony, enough for evidence? Is testimony evidence? And what kind of evidence is it? All these kinds of things. And when you bring a claim and they're going through this, for example, the guy goes, "Hey, I bought a soccer ball at the store." If you know your friends into soccer, that testimony will heighten the evidence claim and make you probably 90 to 95%. You wouldn't probably doubt your friend bought a soccer ball at the store. It's not like a belief to accept, but also it makes sense. He's into soccer, that kind of stuff. So it can be used as evidence. And so we hear testimony. We have written literature that is saying to do good things according to the philosophy of the New Testament, claims of resurrection, and these things. What happened to me, and I'm getting taking the long way to get around to pointing out what I mean by morality, is much of the ethics we find in the New Testament are inspired directly from the philosophies in the pagan world that existed by the philosophers such as the Stoics, the Platonists, Epicureans even. I mean, there were Cynics. A lot of scholars have identified Cynic philosophy in Jesus's words. And so what I'm getting at is like, yes, Christianity ended up dominating the world. No doubt. Islam might be next. It proves nothing of the validity, and you're not making that argument that, it is. I'm just making the point that if the ethics of, let's say, Islam had fruition, and then eventually, let's say, Islam tamed itself from its more radical aspects, we started seeing some positive things. Eventually, they abolished some horrific ideas or whatever. And then all along, the apologists in the Islamic realm just say, all along, these were the truths. It just took a long time for Muslims to finally come around and see them and things like that. And yes, they made a lot of change in large portions of the world. The morality claim to me is just like, there are plenty of societies that thrive quite well with good ethics in the East, for example. And I'm not saying that all their ethics are good. In history, everybody owned slaves, for example. But the morality argument or the ethic argument doesn't really move the needle on me when I can find those ethics predating Jesus in the philosophers of the time. And it's just not a very convincing argument to me, if I'm being just honest with you.
Sure. Yeah, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I could even agree largely, kind of like with your perspective in a sense. I mean, there's a lot to unpack, and
Of course.
a lot of it comes down to, like, what's your standard of evidence and what's your definition of truth. And I think that, like, fundamentally, of course, we're not really going to fully agree with that. But I would say that, in a sense, and sorry, I'm just going to have an interruption in just a second here, but I'll say it like this, like. Sorry, I'm distracted because somebody came up to talk to me. So just give me one moment. I'm sorry. Hold on.
And Dalton, feel free to, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, let him add, and I'll respond because I do have a response to you, but it's going to be a little long winded, and I want to make sure I address both you guys.
So I agree with Derek that here the thing is, people are good or bad, and they are going to use their religion to either justify their goodness or to excuse their badness. They're going to the religion doesn't really. I don't think Christianity really makes people good or bad. People are good or bad regardless, and they're going to use a religion to justify or excuse their actions regardless. And to Derek's point, yeah, I mean the fact that we have ethics and morals in a moral society before and outside of Judeo-Christianity. So I think in general I think people are good in spite of what Christianity will tell them.
If I may add just to that, while Neuro's paused for a second here, I was on my way up here, and I've caught some slack. I'm glad Neuro brought up some of the ortho bros that I've engaged in the past, because one of the things I haven't done is studied a lot of the philosophy or philosophers. And so I had a 9-hour trip getting up here to my mother-in-law, we don't know how much time she has left. She's on stage 4 cancer right now. I'm in her backyard, and my wife's inside spending time with her. And I was told by a lot of friends of mine who do know Plato, who do know Socrates quite well, and they've said start with, Credo or Crito, apology, start diving into Meno, start diving into Euthyphro. And I started reading all of these, and I spent 9 hours that day listening to all these audiobooks, and I started realizing I noticed some trends. This is 300-400 years before Jesus. In some of the cases, it literally says there is not a single situation where you are allowed to harm another human being. Coming out of Plato, Socrates, in these discussions, that they had such an ethic that harming any human at any time is absolutely uncalled for, and they do not allow it. And so I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. Turn the other cheek kind of philosophy. We find this kind of sacrifice for oneself and pray for your enemy kind of thing. You see this idea already existing hundreds of years in the philosophers' minds. Their reasoning may be a bit different from the time you get to Jesus, but the seeds are already planted there. I can imagine Buddha having a similar thing, harming others, harming any life. He goes beyond just humans. And all of these things, it just doesn't move the needle on the truth of it for me, because if it did, I would equally lay out, the other religious views and be like, oh, yeah, this is convincing to me, but the ethics one doesn't move the needle on the ontological belief of a religion. I think you can have a lot of religions teach good ethics. I mean, I know Mormons who are more ethical than evangelicals, and they would say they're false religious people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be a tendency to have like a purity spiraling among Christianity. And again, I think that's, maybe depends on your perspective, because, okay, you could, I mean, I like to argue things like, for instance, that Nietzsche was a Christian who struggled, and he wrote all these polemics against Christianity because he saw the value in Christianity, but also hated how it had been bastardized, by, people like Hegel, maybe, for example, right? So, like I would say that, Hegel is like the father of like modern, heresy of Christianity, for example, right? So like, should we delineate like pre-Hegelian Christianity versus post-Hegelian Christianity, such as Marx? Because I mean, I would say that communism is basically a heresy of Christianity in a lot of ways, right? And I mean, if you want to get technical about it, I mean, Marx kind of said that in a sense, right? So, and I think that it is kind of a strength that if you want to like look at Christianity as a syncretic version of previous philosophies and stuff like that, then that. I think that is, you can make a strong argument for that. But to me, that kind of would like kind of strengthen Christianity. Like I particularly agree with what you're saying about the Cynics. I think that people often overlook that, like, Jesus very much sounded like an Eastern and Western version of Cynic philosophy in a lot of ways. And I think that's a very poignant thing that you point out, to be honest with you.
I mean, It sounds like we could just take the ethics and leave all the, because like again, I don't think there's really anything all that like unique to Christianity as far as its ethics are concerned. So I can take the ethics and I don't need any of the religious aspects. Like the question really at the end of the day is does Yahweh exist? Is the Bible historically accurate? Did Jesus resurrect from the dead? Was he the Messiah? Because at the end of the day, these ethics are not unique to Christianity.
I'll tell you the problem with your argument, and from my perspective as a Christian. And again, this isn't to like demean you guys or belittle you, but like you kind of just discard the concept of God from a Christian point of view, which, from your own argument, I think you could argue that it's a syncretic God or something like that, or a perennialist God or something, one of those two. I don't know which one would fit best. But you're kind of trading that God for the God of reason, right? This is kind of why I bring up, like, people like Kant or Hegel. Like, you're kind of just trading,
I don't have any God. I don't have any.
Yeah, you're kind of like worshiping reason. No, you're kind of saying like, well, I need to be able to reason things out in a rationalist, Descartesian sense.
But
see, this is the thing.
I don't worship.
Yeah, reason is a tool, but reason is a tool. It doesn't like epistemologically, ontologically, like exist outside of time and space, right?
No, but I don't think anything does.
Yeah, you think. See, again, you're kind of like in a solipsistic Descartesian framework of mind, which is kind of what we've all been put into by modern thinking.
I can only believe things that I'm convinced of, and I'm not convinced that Christianity is true. And when I say true, I mean comports to reality.
Yeah, but see, this is the thing: is that term doesn't actually really mean anything at the end of the day, And again, I'm not saying this to like belittle your position, but I think that
which term?
You're making a distinction between. You're not really making a distinction between belief and faith, right? Like, there's a difference. Like faith doesn't require belief necessarily. I don't think.
Faith is a type of belief.
Like you can live it. I don't think so.
It's belief without.
I think it's super. That's a very particular and peculiar definition. I kind of reject that, right?
Yeah, I would just go to Hebrews 11 in terms of how do I understand faith, and the examples that are listed from those in the scripture, and they use the Hebrew Bible, happen to be in circumstances where all the evidence is contrary to the promise. So God promises something, and Abraham's way too old, or Sarah's way too old, or the situation in front of their eyes do not seem to make sense with what he's promising them, and yet they're still having hope. So contrary to the evidence, they have hope. And the example in that, the faith hall of fame, if you will, with all the list in Hebrews 11, describes people having hope in cases where all the evidence seems to suggest that's not going to happen, but they still believe, or they still have hope in God doing those things he promises. So that's why a lot of skeptics you'll hear say faith is believing in things without evidence, because when you look at and maybe that doesn't sound right, because sometimes we're going back and forth and trying to engage and debate and whatnot. But when you just look at the face value of that Hall of Fame, a lot of those people have no reason in front of their eyes. We walk by faith, not by sight. Contrary to what sight is, we believe. And so this is why we look at it and go, okay, God's promising stuff. The evidence doesn't seem to contort to it until he fulfills that promise. And the example's already in scripture. So we're reading a story that's telling you he fulfilled his promise, when most of us question the historicity of those stories to begin with, as if they ever happened to begin with. So it's like, I guess we're getting off track of like, why should we become a Christian? I think we all agree there are ethics that we could find that are good or bad in all systems. I imagine you may not agree with that as far as Christianity because you are a Christian, but I don't think the ethics moves us the needle toward why we should become Christians and believe. There are other philosophies and religions that have ethical systems. So we're wondering, what other than ethics would you argue?
Sure. Well, I would argue like this again. I think that, to my knowledge, I think that, if you want to look at it from a pragmatic point of view, which I think that's where you guys are coming from, which I think is another trap. But again, like I do respect it more than most worldviews.
For me, it's not pragmatism. It's just simply like I don't necessarily care about if a religion works or it functions in society. I want to know whether or not the religion is factually true, if it comports to reality. Like I could
Yeah, but you're
adopt,
putting a value on truth that,
yes,
ultimately you're still kind of arguing that, yeah, but you're still kind of arguing that it has some sort of,
it has value to
practical
me.
or intrinsic value. Exactly, right. So it's still a subjective value that you're kind of like imprinting upon
Yes,
the
so
idea itself,
I
so
can have ethics and morals without Christianity. At the end of the day, though, if I want to become a Christian, I need to be convinced that Christianity is true. And the way to do that is by providing evidence in favor of its veracity, not just its usefulness.
right. But so again, I'll just make a few brief points just to leave you with some thought experiments from my angle, because I think that's kind of what you guys are that's kind of one of you guys' strengths. So I'll put it like this. I would put it like this. I think that Christianity is one of the only faiths that allows people to kind of play golf between themselves and God. Like God being like the golf course or life, and yourself as the player of golf, right? Like you usually don't play golf necessarily against the other people unless you're in a tournament, right? But ultimately, you're trying to beat your last best, or at least find some sort of satisfaction out of the game that you're playing, right? And I think that that's kind of the perspective that Christianity brings to the world. I don't know that another faith does that. For example, like
I don't quite understand the analogy, but if you're making the claim that Christianity allows for one to have like a personal connection with the deity, I don't think that's unique to Christianity.
I mean, I certainly do think it is, but let me explain briefly. And again,
I can get that. I can get that in Judaism.
well, you kind of seem to get that from like scientism, right? Like you kind of think that like, well, by analyzing and measuring things, it gives you some sort of like
connection to the divine,
to reality that's superior to somebody else. I mean, you're kind of doing a simulacrum of that, I think.
I'm able to understand the physical world to a better extent through science. I don't know what scientism is. Scientism's not a real word.
It is a real word. It's the religion of like some solipsistic religion that a lot of people are in that they just can't admit to themselves.
I'm not a solipsist.
I think most people in the modern age are definitely a solipsist, whether they're aware of it or not, for sure. But again, I'm just leaving you guys with some thoughts.
I think what you're doing is what a lot of Christian apologists do, is that you have to sort of drag atheists down into the muck of religion. Like you realize that there's something wrong with religion, so you have to point fingers at us and say, well, actually, you too, you're religious, but we're not. I don't have a religious bone in my body.
You definitely are.
I'm definitely not.
I don't think that, but by every definition of the word of religion, I think you guys do fit it. And again, I'm not saying that to dig on you. I think it's
there's not a single deity that I
natural
worship.
to humans.
I think he's breaking
up.
up.
This is why people do, I don't like the way that the guys do the presupposition with you guys, but I do think that in general, like, you do have to examine all the presuppositions, at least to yourself in private, in the closet, like we Christians do when we pray.
But I don't worship any deities.
About what your belief is.
I can't belong to religion. I don't worship any deities. I don't have like a.
You do. The religion, the deity that you worship is the deity of reason. You think that reason is like some sort of superior thing that has ontology.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Deity has meaning, and if you like extend the word deity to refer to not just like actual gods, but literally to anything, then it doesn't.
But that's what you're doing with our God. You're trying to like drag God into reason when God is supra reason. No, that's kind of my point, right? It is.
No, I'm just defining deity as a divine being.
Like, do you think that we could ever? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a genuine question. Do you think that you could ever quantify or qualify the existence of the universe via any sort of reason or science or anything like that? Do you think that's ever possible? Do you think you could ever have the? Okay.
I don't know.
Say what?
I don't know.
You don't know. So you think the universe is, as far as we could tell, basically infinite, and you think that there's some way we could possibly compute the totality of reality?
I don't know. I can't see the future, but I don't know what scientists in the future will be capable of doing.
Sure, but if you had to put a hypothesis forward, would you say that which would you would you say that my hypothesis is closer to that or yours?
I don't do that kind of stuff.
What I don't even know what your hypothesis ultimately is. I mean, I know you're a Christian, but we're not trying to like straw man your position or make you things you say you aren't, even though you keep trying to put that label onto us. And
Well,
we're
because you
simply
guys are trying to say that like that there has to be some sort of like evidence, quote unquote, of there being a God. I mean, for me, it's
If
like
you yes, if
it
you want
we're
us to be
asking
convinced,
specifically
reality
Christianity.
doesn't you can't
But we're
reason how reality
Jack
exists though, is what I'm trying to
Jack,
say.
we're specifically asking Christianity because at the end of the day, who knows? I mean, let's just say in 5 years, I'm like, you know what, man? I think Plato and these guys were onto something. Maybe there is something out there. Shit, I could be wrong. Cool. Cool.
Yeah, I
Something,
think Plato was
something, yeah,
definitely
but
onto something. I
okay. And
think Plato was definitely onto something for sure.
mind you, let me elaborate a little bit here. Cool. Right. So we come to an agreement. Let's just say we're both like, you know what? We just somehow, let's say empirically, there was a way of pointing toward that made people convinced like me and Dalton. Now, why Christianity? Why not polytheism? Why not the various systems that predate it? Why not the pagan version of the philosophers that centuries prior to Christianity already had these ideas that Christianity inherits many of those ideas, recycles them in their own systems. But it's just like, why Jesus? And so I think we're culturally brought up, and this is one of the things I think Dalton would probably agree with, is that Christianity dominated the world mostly. I mean, through coercion and psychological, I'll say manipulation, and I don't mean that necessarily derogatorily, even though it
Well,
can be that way in certain circumstances. So
well,
I'm
I'll
asking
also say
why.
I'd also say that maybe it's through the strength of its usefulness. Like
There's
maybe
that
it's
too.
useful to see the world through a certain lens, right? And this
I
lens
don't
has provided people with
I
the
personally
ability to do all these great things, right?
I personally don't care about whether or not Christianity is useful. I care about whether or not it's true.
Well, let me put it this way, and I'll try to make it a little bit personal. Like I have family members that have died recently and are probably going to die soon, right? And I think that that's kind of what Derek was talking about. And look, I see as a Christian, I see our time here on earth as like it's a test, but it's a test of love to let God know us and us to know him and prepare us for whatever comes next. Even if there's not, let's assume that you're right, there's just nothing after this, consciousness disappears, which I don't believe. I think you could look at the the laws of thermodynamics and like energy and all this. Like something about our existence is going to continue, I would say, even from a scientific point of view, but we don't know what that looks like exactly, right? But I think that Christianity allows us the lens in which to take all that pressure off of, trying to be uh, this like miniature, small d deity of reason, right? I think if
Again, again,
I think people have become the
don't
slave to
again,
reason, in my opinion.
again, don't stop throwing around that word deity. It has a meaning, and as soon as we start making it refer to just anything could be deity, then that word is meaningless.
Well, because you
A
use
word
it
which
as an
means anything
axiom,
means a
because
word
you're
which means
using it as an
anything.
axiom that it
A word which means anything means nothing. And again, I don't care
because you can't
about
justify the
again and again and
but you
again.
can't
I don't and again and
you
again
can't
and again and again. I don't care about whether or not Christianity is useful. I care about whether or not it's true.
but here's the thing is you can't prove reason is real through reason, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to
It's
tell you, right? You're trying to use it like it's a
it's just an
presupposition that
axiom.
must be but say what?
It's just an axiom that that reason is
Right, but
just the
axioms have to be
reason reason is
justified, right?
reason is just what our brains do to make sense of the universe. The universe objectively
Right.
exists.
So
Our
so if I
brains
as a
have are,
Christian
our br- our brains notice
right.
patterns,
So
and
so
then
if I as a so if
patterns
I as a
are reason.
right, and if
Jack,
I as a human reason that God is real, not in the sense of a
that's
deist sense
fine.
of the word,
Well, it's
then
fine if
then it's. I mean, if you want to quote a philosopher, I can quote Plantinga or Rene Girard or all these other people. You can go read
that's
like
fine if you believe
their stuff if
that's
you want,
fine.
right?
That's fine if you believe that God exists, Jack. I don't really care about that topic. I care about whether or not Yahweh exists specifically, and whether or not Christianity is true. Did Jesus rise from the dead? Was he the Messiah? I don't care about the moral arguments of whether or not you think Christianity is. At the end of the day, you and I just have different goals. You care about something which you think is useful to you. I just care about what is true. even if that thing is not useful to me.
Well, I don't really believe in like a hard pragmatism, but I don't think that um, anybody can just value truth, intrinsically. I mean, that's kind of like a Luciferian, like I'm trying to make myself God so I can evaluate the
I know,
intrinsic value of
again,
things, right?
you really
Jack.
Jack, you really want us to believe in a God. We don't believe in a God, Jack. Not any kind of God whatsoever. And you keep throwing it around.
I know
and
this
it
is going to
becomes
sound
it,
disrespectful, but God is
and
your
it
daddy,
becomes
and
it's me.
you just hate your dad. That's the
No,
problem.
he's not my dad, Jack. Your word God doesn't, ironically, doesn't mean jack shit. The way you use the word God, it doesn't have any meaning. If God means anything, then it means nothing.
Jack, you're
God
funny.
is a supernatural being that creates the universe, rules it. It is the source of morals. I don't think that thing is real. I don't have a deity.
I know. I just want to tell you guys, I do love you. This is a really fun experience. I don't want to like end on a bad note because I do like you guys. I think that you guys are doing good work. Yeah, as a Christian, I think that challenges to our faith are healthy, to be honest with you. So I really do encourage you guys to continue what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
And yeah, and I wish I could argue this better. I'm kind of distracted, unfortunately, but I really do enjoy talking to you guys. I appreciate your time a lot. Okay.
But we'll do these in the future, and hopefully you can come and we can address the specific topic in more depth. But again, I really appreciate you calling. We got someone in the back ready to come on next.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Have a good one. I figure it's worth me just saying this, and I want you to unpack each time a caller might leave. This isn't to do it while they're gone because we're trying to. We can do this while they're on stream, but I do think it's important to kind of unpack each caller just to say, like, first caller, when it comes to truth, which that could be defined differently as well. Are we talking about facts? Are we talking about truth? Whole different thing. But it was Christianity that told me the truth will set you free. For me, in my mind, I thought truth equated to what reality was, and that's what we can test, observe, the facts on the ground, these kinds of things. And it was that motivation that honestly, through deeper, harder research, caused me to question it. It was through that philosophy of like truth. It's what's reality that you're ultimately going to find that's going to make you more convinced of this, and eventually led me away from it. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, and then we'll bring our next caller on.
Yeah, I'll just say that the two worst types of arguments from me that are Phil Bros. We've already talked about this before the show. I hate Phil Bros, but also the moral argument for like Christianity being useful is never going to be convincing to me. It's because at the end of the day, I don't care if something is useful. I want to know. That's just my goal. My personal goal is I want to know what reality is.
Right. Yeah, and again, I mean, at the end of the day, if we were able to actually show, like through lab tests, that the utility of this religion is actually overall helping all of the world, if they could show this in a test tube and prove it, I'm going to be honest with you. I've said this on a recent stream, and I know we want the truth, but I have said some edgy shit in saying, look, if the utility of a particular religion actually improved, I don't know how we'd even be able to show that. I would go with what actually was utility-wise better for humanity, even if we had to play make-believe. Okay, I know that's a thing you may not agree with in my statement here, but I don't think it's true. I'm saying I would need the evidence. So if they could show the evidence, then I'd have to really struggle with something here and go, you know what? We're apes on a planet trying to figure this shit out. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's a whole nother, that's away from Christianity though. That's kind of like not really addressing the why should you and I become Christians from the facts. So anyway, let's get our next caller on. And if you're cool with that.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, cool. The real duck's in the house. What's up?
Hey, what's up? Good to see you guys.
Hey, welcome to Mythvision and the Bible Guy.
Yeah, thank you guys. I was very excited to see you guys streaming together. I watch your verticals, Bible Guy, and Derek. Obviously, it's cool to see you around tacos. Cool to see when Mythvision goes live.
Thank you. So I imagine just up front, you're a Christian.
I was raised Catholic, right? And
Okay.
so I've done and like I'll write philosophy if it ends up being natural. I'll write that stuff, right? But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm very far from being anti-religion that makes sense.
Okay. Well, we're looking to see why we should become Christians. And I don't know if that's what we're like trying to keep the topic on as much as possible. So are you
Yeah.
trying to convince us why we should become Christians, or did you have something specific you were trying to bring up briefly? Because we're trying to get people to kind of argue why we should be Christians. Why should we believe this, you know?
Yeah. So I think I can convince you guys. I mean, I don't know if you need to be Christian, but okay. So here's what the argument's like, right? You know, if you read the book of Psalms, any of the Bible, like one of the consistent themes is just the weakness of the flesh. And so to me, when we're talking about arguments that develop from testimony, when we have these theological terms like revelation or revealed religion, you know, it seems like the people that wrote the Bible and are telling these stories, providing these lessons, they're talking about divinity, have a solid recognition and grasp of their of their access to the human experience. And so I think this strengthens claims as evidence. I think it strengthens testimony. It strengthens the abductive and perhaps inductive case that the Bible is divinely inspired for multiple reasons.
So my biggest contention with the idea that the Bible is divinely inspired is mostly going to be due to the fact that it contains scientific and historical errors. It makes a lot of claims about Jesus being the Messiah, often misquoting and taking the Old Testament out of context in order to make that point seem more valid. And then when it comes to the resurrection, we really don't have any eyewitness testimony to the resurrection of Jesus.
Yeah. And so I think when, you know, when people take you know, these phrases like by faith alone and say, well, look, there is a strong historical account for the Bible and stuff. You know, where there's a historical interpretation, right? You have you can do exegesis, there's philology and all this other, you know, this fancy stuff, whatever. It's all BS. But like you know, I still don't think it takes away from the fact that, like, you know, the reason this isn't like why isn't it the case that a wrestling camp, right? This is my argument. Why isn't it the case that a wrestling camp or a Navy SEAL training is producing divine writings, right? Most often, if you follow like Sun-Kissed Kids or any of the like, you follow like jujitsu buses, these people doing really hard things, talking about weakness of the flesh, produce a bunch of nonsense, right? It's all nonsense. It's slop content. And yet with the Bible, we have a religion that's supporting over 1 billion people around the world. I think that's something that's profound, and you have to be able to explain it. The historical argument is one thing, but that doesn't take away from the belief that you can form in a justifiable manner from those books.
You do recognize that there are holy texts outside of Christianity that point to the weakness of human flesh.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
So that wouldn't really bring us to the idea that Christianity is true. It just means that maybe that these authors recognize something that anyone really can recognize, is that human beings are frail, and they also happen to believe in a particular deity, and they coupled those two beliefs together.
Okay, I mean, so that's one interpretation, is that people believe in a deity, right? And so there's no outside or vertical cause that creates this sort of singular interpretation that you have religion as truth. However, that doesn't change the fact that, like, you know, imagine, like, if you see if you know, an analogy that I think makes more sense in this case is if you have a singer, a masked singer in Times Square, and they gather a crowd of 100,000 people. You know, I think you'd be safe to assume that this is probably a famous person. This is probably a famous singer. They're probably classically trained. You know, there's a reason that 100,000 people gather for this person, right? That's not that controversial, I don't think. And so I think in theological terms, you know, we're still just talking about strong testimony. We're not talking about like, we don't have to talk about causation. We don't have to talk about the actual state of affairs in the universe yet. We're just wondering if this unexplained experience possibly has a divine or supernatural explanation. And I think more people agree that it can, or it does.
Is there something in particular in regards to the Bible that you're pointing to that you think testimony is that the testimony is strong enough to validate?
I would say the presence. If you want me to make it stronger, I would say the presence of not just weakness of the flesh, but also these situations that seem like realistic or historically coherent. Large moral conundrums that don't seem to have an apparent solution that most humans can find.
It just sounds like myth making, though. I mean, it's. I mean, when we're talking about the Bible, I mean, people recognize it seems more parsimonious to me. People recognize that human beings are frail and fragile and full of like troubles. These people believed in a certain deity or deities, and at least in one case, the ancient Israelites didn't believe in just one God. And then on top of that, they created myths that were meant to explain the human condition.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. That to me, that starts sounding like the centrality is more based around like presuppositionalism. I'm not trying to go over your head, but it just sounds like, if you say, oh well, one possible explanation is myth making, so it's probably myth making. That's not actually engaging. I won't say it's not engaging the hypothetical, but I just don't think that it is assuming like at least naturalism, or it's assuming the myth-making narrative is historical and social, perhaps.
Well, naturalism is the default position.
Okay, yeah, that's so cool, right?
So, like, for example, when it comes to the resurrection, why should we think that Jesus of Nazareth was really resurrected from the dead?
Yeah, so why? I don't know that you have to believe. Like, I'm a former Catholic, right? So you're not going to get it out of a Catholic's lips that you have to believe in the resurrection, but I don't think you have to believe in the resurrection to get theological value out of it.
I'm an ex-Catholic. You do have to confess that Jesus is resurrected from the dead in order to be Catholic. That's part of the Nicene Creed.
I understand all that.
So that is necessary.
Not necessary like you're saying it.
Yes, it is. You have to believe in the resurrection of the dead in order to be Catholic.
Yeah, right.
So it is necessary. So the question is, why should we think that Jesus was resurrected?
Yeah, I mean, I think the manner in which Jesus died and was reappeared to people satisfies the resurrection narrative, to be honest.
What do we know about the way he appeared to people?
He did it, right? That's what's in the Gospels, is he did it.
Well, the Gospels are, I think the Gospels are myth. I don't necessarily believe that they're telling the truth about what Jesus said and did. When the Gospels themselves change facts about Jesus's life from one Gospel to the next in order to satisfy some sort of theological belief, I don't have any really good reason to believe that the resurrection accounts of Jesus are accounts of true events.
I don't get why you're asking me these questions if you're not going to listen to the answer I give you, right? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I am listening to the answers you're giving me. I'm asking you, why I should become a Christian?
This is the second time you asked me a question and you said, well, it's just naturalism, right? You asked me to come up here and say, why should you be Christian? And if the answer is always just going to default to, oh, well, it's naturalism. And then you're going to ask why I can believe the resurrection as allegorical, but also significant. And then, oh, it didn't happen. I don't get it.
You think it's allegorical? You think it's allegorical?
Huh?
You think it's allegorical?
Yeah, I mean, I think someone's fine for, like, if that thought doesn't enter your head, you're probably mentally ill, right?
Dude, most Christians don't. I mean, I'm not going to say I can't speak for all of them, but most Christians think it literally. I'm sure you know that, Duck. By the way, I wanted Dalton to spend some time engaging here. There's a lot of stuff here to unpack. earlier you brought up like the how many people believe this, kind of the idea of how so many people are convinced of it. And I think of Islam. There's a huge mass amount of people there. You brought up myth making, and we're not. I think we need to back up for a second and just say this. Me and the Bible guy, think of Socrates, who's very skeptical, who's going to question, who's going to be, constantly try to go, whoa, about the resurrection. We're just doing what Socrates is doing. We might be a bit of a gadfly. We're annoying, okay? But that's because we're not convinced that the testimony we're reading in the material is convincing. It could convince us that, yeah, maybe people had experiences at best, but humans have experiences all the time with all sorts of things. And so we're questioning the very nature of the resurrection and the truth of Christianity as if this is reality, as if this is the one true religion we should be following and not any other religion. And so when I compare using heuristic approaches to other religions, even contemporaneous to Christianity, and I see other people who ascend to heaven, who are miraculous healers, all these kinds of things, I think to myself, seems like this is something that is prevalent, that people were doing around this time. And that to me, at least, brings it in on the plate that, okay, Jesus isn't the only guy doing things like this. That raises doubt for me on one testimony, or the testimonies we find within one religion. And then there's other testimonies. So you actually were the one commenting in the back, correct me if I'm wrong, Duck, on the Matt Dillahunty engagement with the other guys. And I was listening to it. I'm not a philosopher, okay? I'm trying to get my head wrapped around some of this stuff. But yes, I can see testimony being used as evidence when you have a trustworthy report of people you know and trust. And I always tell Christians, you're convinced of the testimony written in text. Some of that testimony, scholars, I think, have done a damn good job of showing was made up. And what I mean by that is 2 Peter. It's even non-evangelical Christians often look to 2 Peter and say, this is not written by Peter. And in there's an eyewitness claim in 2 Peter chapter 1. He claims.
Did Derek freeze for you?
Yeah, he did.
I'm sorry. The internet's not the greatest out here, guys. Can you hear me?
You're good. No, you're good. Yeah, everything's good.
I should probably stop after just saying 2 Peter 1, for example, is a pseudepigraphical writing, not really written by Peter. Claims to be an eyewitness on the Holy Mountain, quoting Matthew. It's dependent upon Matthew, but even non-evangelicals, Eusebius and others, questioned its authenticity. So when you have fabricating eyewitness accounts combined with supposedly authentic eyewitness accounts by Christians, and then you find out Christians weren't the only ones claiming to be eyewitnesses of things. Asclepius and others were also claimed to have eyewitnesses, and Celsus. I just look at the history, I compare it, and I go, man, I'm not convinced. I'm looking at it going, there's many humans making claims, having experiences.
But Derek,
why
if
this?
If you have one, so I think it's cool to engage the actual myth making case, if where you have felonious writings. But if you have one of these stories where it's like, wow, this is really unlikely to have happened without divine influence. It's very unlikely to have happened to produce this type of writing without divine influence. It's the case that you don't need actually all of these, right? You can say that this is my holy book. Someone can take that and mean it. And there's a reason they might say that, but you can still have just one event that actually has historical significance, which was not myth making. And that satisfies the condition to validate either Christianity or the notion of the monotheistic God, whichever one you choose.
When it comes to the resurrection, though, all we have are these anonymous gospels that don't necessarily correlate with one another. They do contradict each other on important facts about Jesus. And we have Paul, who says that Jesus appeared to certain people, which is, we have several examples of people who are grieving loved ones, seeing their loved ones after they die. We call these bereavement hallucinations. The question is really, why should me and Derek think that Jesus really unless you don't think he physically rose again for the dead, because I'm not quite sure. Do you believe that Jesus physically rose from the dead, or do you only believe it's allegorically true?
Yeah, I believe it's allegorically true in the sense that I think one conceptualization that if you're a theologian or a philosopher, you have to explore is Isaiah stating that it's not the life, but it is the death of Jesus that saves others from death. I don't think that's an example where I don't think that
Isaiah?
is totally allegorical. Yeah, in Isaiah. So when we're talking about the resurrection and Jesus's crucifixion, I think that line sort of captures about where I sit from an epistemic standpoint. Like,
So do you think there's
TMFJ747? Thanks for the super sticker, my friend. Just want to give you shout outs if you send in super chats or super stickers. We really appreciate it. Both I and the Bible guy. Thanks.
So is there, in your worldview, is there still a physical corpse of Jesus left over somewhere out there?
Yeah, I mean, ashes to ashes, right? The man that was crucified, I think his body went the same place as everyone else's.
Okay, so Jesus didn't physically rise from the dead, even though the Gospels would make that claim. So really,
I don't know how he would have ascended into heaven. I don't know how Jesus would have ascended into heaven. I don't need to believe
for century Jews, that's an easy answer. He just went up because heaven was up there. Where does it that you think Isaiah makes reference to the resurrection of Jesus? Because I'd say that there is no reference to the resurrection of Jesus anywhere in the Hebrew Bible.
I don't know. So I know that it's the Gospel of Mark, and it's Isaiah 40, I think, Isaiah chapter 40, that begins referencing the almost the like eschatological or the death narrative of the Savior of the Son of Man, whatever you want to say, whatever.
Isaiah 40 is just about the Israelites leaving exile from Babylon.
42, 43, it's somewhere in there.
All of that section of Isaiah, from Isaiah's 40 to 56, are all about the children of Israel leaving exile and their soon exaltation before the eyes of the nations. There's nothing about a Messiah.
It's somewhere in there. You can Google it if you want.
All right. So Jesus allegorically rose from the dead, not physically. I mean, I think that just means it's a story that you find meaning in, not that Jesus in any real way is actually not dead.
That's a good point, right? That's a good argument, I think. I think for people that do believe, and maybe this is disingenuous because you guys can just say, oh, this duck character is kind of crazy or something. But I think people that do have what seems like a revealed or a divine experience, if you feel you're part of the divine, if you feel God's presence or something, whatever you want to call it, if you feel that and you see there's these unlikely stories, right? This might increase or improve, like, yeah, your Bayesian priors for why you become a Christian.
Well, yeah,
I mean, good reasons to do that.
Yeah, of course, Duck. I mean, that's mostly why Christians become Christian, through some kind of experience. And then when they're being told through that experience, the environment is usually through a pastor or somebody who is giving them, framing it through the mythic framework of the death and the unconditional love of a father, et cetera, in human terms, which I think just taps into the innate nature that humans have by being born by a mother and having a father. So they're tapping into the instinctual things we have in the natural world, and they're having unique experiences. These experiences under whatever context that may be, at a church, at a youth group, through the preaching. They're in jail. They've gone through struggles. They're in addiction. Their women, left them, or they've been abused, whatever it might be. And they then attribute the claims of a myth to an experience, and it doesn't do anything for the truth of that claim. And we can get this all across the world. This has been written extensively by experts in the field, that experience, all of us have it, whether we're religious or not religious, and no matter what hat you wear, you're going to have that. Then one just thinks it's the truth of Buddha or the truth of Islam. And there's a lot of mystical Islamic positions you can hold to. So it sounds to me that you're too heretical for even the people in the back who want to come on and talk to us. They don't even think you're a real Christian. And I'm just telling you what they're saying. Look, I do appreciate you calling in. We do have 4 other callers that are waiting in line, but I want to give you one final, last chance to convince us here. Dalton seems not so convinced, and I'm just sitting back watching on this one, man.
Okay.
Give your best argument right now, Duck. Best argument, please.
Best argument is the Bible is the only collection of books that shows the full spectrum of human experience, and reaches into the divine. It is not a mythology like all others. It's not like LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's not like J.R. Smith, calling a timeout or, not shooting the ball with a second left. It's not like any of those things. It is a story that is capable of forming beliefs. It is deeply allegorical, I think, if you take it that way. And those are all abductive reasons that can lead to induction, and perhaps relate to universal human experiences, why someone can be a Christian. And I think you should all consider it deeply.
I appreciate it, Doug. I don't know. Go ahead.
The real Doug, you've just perfectly described the polycanon from Buddhism. It describes the full breadth of human experience. It claims to have people get in touch with the divine. The polycanon, by the way, is the Tripitaka. It's the text that belongs to Buddhism. Everything you just described also perfectly describes that holy text.
I was thinking of Hinduism
it's a good question,
too.
Right? That's a great question to ask.
Yeah, Doug, I was thinking of Hinduism too, because I know they have some really complex philosophy on how they understand the world, nature, gods, all of that, and our relationship to it. So maybe there's just more learning on looking at those things, because if Christianity and the Bible convinced you, because a lot of these arguments you're bringing up, you might get persuaded to become even more pantheistic or some kind of broadened person who still holds to some ideas. But you might even expand your idea about God bigger when you look into those other traditions. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to take your position away from you. I'm just here to say, what evidence do you have to prove Christianity?
I thought that was evidence. I thought I proved it there, but it doesn't have to. But
I just think it's one. It's one.
I could be Buddhist by that measure.
Right. Right.
Well, but you could be Buddhist, right? But if the question in the prompt is sincerely why we should become Christians, I would say the best reason to do that is because your experience is, there's going to be people in the audience. Your experience doesn't relate to another belief system better than Christianity, right? So just treat it like that.
I think different people have different experiences, and I wouldn't want to act like my experience is more superior, even though I did at one point as a Christian believe that they didn't have real experiences. And in fact, so much so that as a Protestant, I thought Catholics weren't really Christian, because I heard some Catholics convert and they said, well, we didn't have a real personal relationship through this mode of Christianity where I walked down, altar call, gave my life to Christ, that kind of stuff. And other Catholics were offended by it and saying, what do you mean? I authentically believe, I cherish my religion, I go into church. And so I just think dismissing people's personal experiences and grounding your ontology in that experience is natural. I'm not knocking it. I just don't think if we're arguing ideas of what the facts might be, I don't think that's the best approach, in my opinion, because there's a plethora of experiences out there and a plethora of different conclusions.
You're always going to be stronger than me on that type of thing. But I do think when we have people like Matt Dillahunty come into the conversation and they invite the claims that are not evidence conversation, well, it is the case that people can make claims about who the people that actually lived and wrote the Bible were and what those stories are about. And I do think that they're never going to breach historical evidences or fake historicisms. But they do come pretty close, right? They still have that element of conceivability or believability of testimony, right? So there's still those inroads that are going to exist.
Yeah, if I were to boil down, and I think we should wrap up the call and get to our next one. We have several callers waiting, and I'm trying to be as gracious to them as possible. If I were to be as still man as possible, and I know Matt and them are going back and forth with real philosophers, these people are PhD candidate, really know their philosophy. I agree with Alex O'Connor and the other guy, Joe Schmidt, on that claims such as testimony can be used as evidence, but I think what ultimately, if I were to have a conversation with Matt ever, if I really boiled it down to it, he'd go, it's not, to me, those are not convincing testimonies written 2,000 years ago in a book that is surrounded by legendary material and such. I'm just not convinced. And I imagine if it came down to that and he was willing to say, maybe Joe and them are right about this to some degree, these testimonies don't move the needle for me, I would be able to come in to give you alternative testimonies and alternative eyewitness claims and all of that historically from other religious claimants. And then that to me would put it on equal playing ground to go, well, who do we accept? You know, why this one and not all the others and stuff? Well, this one was successful. Those went extinct. Islam hasn't gone extinct. It's growing. And I just would say, like, it doesn't prove the truth of it. Anyway, Doc, I want to let you have the final word before I wrap things up. I appreciate you calling in.
No, I don't have anything. I saw Robin in the audience, and like I said, I like watching you guys. So it was fun to talk for whatever 20, 30 minutes this was. It's cool.
Thank you, Doc.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good one. Okay. Super chats. Gotta hit them. I hate leaving people hanging. TMFJ747. Again, thank you for the super sticker. Looking out, keeping the lights on here. Space Wizard, thank you so much for the super chat. Eschatology equals scatology. This is like, oh, that's a good one. Wade Rogers in the house and is a member of the channel. Thank you, Wade. Jesus went to heaven the same way Romulus was taken to heaven by Mars, his father. Plus, he appeared to humans afterwards like Jesus appeared to Paul. Same myth, different names. Thank you so much, Wade. That is an interesting one. However you want to slice that up, that people appeared according to stories, whether you think they're historical, mythic, legendary, however you want to slice it, appeared to people post-mortem. And people had great commissions from Romulus as well to go and tell all of Rome and all that kind of stuff. So, Wade, you rock. Thank you. Did you want to unpack that caller real quick, briefly, before we get to the next one, Dalton?
All I gotta say is I'm convinced I should become Buddhist now.
All right. Next in line was Toronto, and then Laszlo, and then Ezekiel. Forgive me if I butcher your names here. Just so you know the order. Hang out. If you leave and come back, you've lost your order. We're doing first come, first serve, and being as fair as possible. We ready?
Absolutely.
All right. Toronto, welcome back, man.
How are you? How are you, Derek? How's it going?
I'm good,
How are
man.
you, Bible guy?
Howdy, partner.
Good.
Toronto,
So,
are you a
because
Christian?
Yeah, I am. You would be surprised to find out that I am in fact a Christian, sir.
I just wondered if you liked Roman crucifixion because you got a cross behind you. That's
well, you know, we use it to represent our Lord and Savior. His the most famous crucifixion of all time, which is a good reason to believe it. You know, why should this poor preacher from this backwater of the Roman Empire become the most famous crucifixion ever? You know, of all the millions of crucifixions in Rome, how many?
You can thank Constantine for that. You can thank Constantine for that.
Maybe that's the only question. But then why did Constantine convert to it? You know, why does that religion take over the Roman Empire?
You can thank his mom for that.
It also utility. It had usefulness. It was that between that or the invincible son, and Christianity seemed to have the utility, even though he had to twist it into a way that was contrary to the teachings of Jesus, which he would have never been pro-war. Not as far as a lot of the teachings seem to imply, turn the other cheek, these kinds of pacifistic elements, but just war theory starts to come in, of course, and they try to make sense of it. So you is that your argument? I'm curious.
Well, I was going to talk about the fact that the Jesus, his death and resurrection is a historical event, and it's got good evidence for it, and it presents God as the creator of moral truth, and so it's like it provides like these useful things for us in daily life.
So I agree with you that the death. I agree with you that the death of Jesus is historical. I think Jesus of Nazareth was crucified by the Romans. I think probably buried in a mass grave with other crucifixion victims. But why should I think that he resurrected from the dead?
Well, there is the evidence of Paul's writings and the other gospel accounts, and it's hard to explain all these as just. Pardon?
Would you like to start with Paul?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. This is the First Corinthians account, right? It has all those witnesses named.
1 Corinthians chapter 15. 1 Corinthians
15,
chapter
yeah.
15, Paul says that Jesus appeared. He uses the Greek word opthe there. He appeared to Simon and then to the 12 and then to 500 brethren all at once. The question is, what is the nature of that appearance? In what way did Jesus appear to them? Did he appear to them physically in the room with them? Did he appear in a sort of in a sense that they merely felt his presence in the room with them? Can we know by reading Paul's letters what he means by appeared?
Well, I would say he means by what he means by appeared is that he appeared as a living person, because he refers later in the chapter. He talks about how that we're all going to rise in that same way as incorruptible bodies. So it's like a physical resurrection, and
Well,
also
I don't think Paul does
Okay.
describe a physical resurrection. I think he describes that, there's the body that is buried, but it's not the same body that is raised. He uses the analogy of like a plant coming forth from the seed. We would never say that the seed rises, the seed stays buried, it stays dead, and from it arises the plant. I think that's the image that Paul is trying to make. Not that Jesus had a Paul never describes Jesus' resurrection body as flesh and blood, but as but as pneuma, as spirit.
Yeah, it's raised a spiritual body in the sense that it's an incorruptible body. That's what he's talking about. Not that it's a literal spirit. It's a spiritual body, right? It's not a spirit, but a spiritual body that is an incorruptible body. He's comparing it to the natural body to the spiritual body, right? He would have been aware of the gospel accounts on those things too, like Jesus eating.
Well,
just
I don't think he would be aware of that because they weren't written down yet. We don't get the first gospel until at least 70 CE.
He would have met those writers though. He would have met them. Peter.
How do we? Well, we don't.
James.
Well, we don't know. We don't know who wrote the gospels, and we don't know that Paul would have known them or even been aware of them. I mean, when Paul gives us a list of the people that Jesus appeared to in order, the first person he mentions is Peter. He doesn't even mention Mary Magdalene. He never even mentions there being an empty tomb. Only that Jesus was buried. It didn't say in what manner, and that he appeared to Peter first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we know he would have mentioned them because that's just the way the ancient world was. They respect the testimony of men more than women, right? And this is the same thing. People bring up that idea of the criterion of embarrassment, the idea of why the gospel accounts refer to the women finding him first.
Well, that's easy
because they want to speak the truth. They don't want to. They don't care about telling it in a way that's believable. They want to tell it in a way that's true.
Oh no, you would tell it's a way that's believable, because if you want to create a narrative where Jesus is laid in a tomb and then someone finds his body, the person that you would logically have find his body would be a woman, because it's their job to go and take care of the bodies afterwards. Also, when it comes to embarrassment, the people of the first century, they don't care about whether or not something is particularly embarrassing. In fact, embarrassing facts about deities sells better. Because, like, for example, fratricide, killing one's brother, was considered abominable in the Greco-Roman world. And yet they taught that Romulus killed his brother Remus. Like, something being, and we don't really necessarily think that Romulus or Remus existed, nor did one kill the other. So an embarrassing fact only sells the gospel more to a Greco-Roman audience.
The embarrassment thing isn't just about the idea that it's negative. It's more about the idea that their testimony is not regarded well. But sorry, Derek, go ahead.
No, you're fine, because I think it's important to note that this apologetic has been dismantled. I mean, this it doesn't work. We know that women specifically would have gone to the tomb historically. The role of women in mourning and burial was culturally standard in ancient Mediterranean society. It would have been unusual if women were not at the tomb. And the literary reason, for example, for women being the first witnesses in Mark is that they flee and say nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. That is the original ending of Mark, which Mark chapter 16, verse 8. The women are not triumphant eyewitnesses, and some scholars think that the reason they went and told no one is to explain why they didn't know about this narrative. But on a mythic level, on a mythic point, if you just look to Osiris, who dies also and is said in their mythic traditions to resurrect, Isis searches for the body, going to look for the body with her sister Nephthys. You also find in the Tammuz cult in the Hebrew scripture, the women who are mourning over the death of Tammuz, which is just Adonis in the Greek world, women always are said, even in Dionysus's death, he's twice born, the Maenads through revelatory experiences also. So look, you can go through several cultic mythic examples, but also historically, you can go through historical examples where women were burying, and that was part of their custom, was to bury people, bury the dead in the Mediterranean world at this time. So either way you go, whether you go down the mythic path or the historical path, and maybe the mythic was inspired by the historic, either way, you have women going to the tomb. It's not an embarrassment. This is an anachronistic apologetic to try and argue, well, their testimony isn't as good as men's, so why would they make it up? I mean, we have several stories in both myth and history, so real history, where women did this act. And I just find this a very weak argument. The one thing I will say about 1 Corinthians 15, though, just to finish my thought, is that I've actually interviewed Delcy Allison Jr. on this. I've interviewed experts on this. There is a real question as to why Mary or other women are not mentioned in the list. According to Allison, and this is just one academic among many, is that it was male-centric. The early church was clearly not a fan of women apostles. Now, there's a debate on much of the words that Paul says about women remaining silent and all of these things you find within his letters, many scholars think aren't really Paul. Paul had women apostles, they had revelations, they spoke in tongues, they prophesied. Women were on the same footing as the rest of the people. And there are real contentions by critical scholars in suggesting that later patristics are putting in the mouth of Paul in a lot of these fake letters in the name of Paul, oh, be silent, go to your husband, don't speak. That kind of stuff would make sense if they're trying to silence women in the church. Okay. Sorry, I had to unburden all that so that you understand.
No, I mean,
apologetic doesn't work, in my opinion.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I can respond to those points individually, but it's a lot you dropped there.
I had to.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, I get it.
Come on, man. Come on. I mean, you got to give me
you're dying to let it out. I know you're an expert in your field. I get it.
I'm not an expert. No. I'm not an expert. I talk
you're quite knowledgeable. But I would just say
here. Let's start with the first point.
Those arguments you made are, I think individually I could take them down, but it's like,
well, I had to make it collective. But Dalton, please, I want Dalton to help us.
Well, wait, before
let's divide up into little. Let's divide up into little bite sizes and just deal with the first thing first. Like, if you were creating this story about the resurrection, you would have it be women. It would be weird if you had men discovering the empty tomb first. We can start with that.
Not necessarily. You might say, okay, the women went there the next day, and then they I don't know. There could be many reasons why you could tell the story in such a way as to make men tell it. But anyway, I don't think the criterion of embarrassment
wouldn't be believable. It wouldn't be believable though to a Greco-Roman audience. It's not the job of men to go and take care of dead bodies.
Okay. So let's just say that's not a big important aspect then. So the women found him. Okay, so then the women found him. And then there's all these eyewitness testimonies of this risen man, risen Jesus.
Where?
Right? Well, in the Gospels, in the Paul's letters as well. As I was saying to you, you're trying to take down this idea that
the problem is that the Gospels are not eyewitness testimonies. We don't know who wrote them.
We don't know who wrote them, so therefore they're not eyewitness testimonies. How does that work?
I mean, Matthew and Mark never even claim to be eyewitness. Mark, the first gospel written, doesn't claim to be written by an eyewitness. It's just a story.
Right. And Luke does, right? And Luke says that he contacted eyewitnesses, and John says it was written by eyewitnesses.
Who are those eyewitnesses?
The other two stories. Hold on. The other two stories now.
But
they're obviously written by eyewitnesses, or they're obviously contacting eyewitnesses. But go ahead.
Who are they? Yeah. Well, let's take it piece by piece because I did unburden a lot. I admit my fault because that is a lot of material, but I wanted to just point out the criterion of embarrassment just doesn't work. Who's Luke's eyewitnesses?
We don't know all the eyewitnesses, but certainly the other apostles, Mary herself. It sounds like he talked to her. You know what I mean?
Well,
how do you know that?
He says it in the prologue. So he
well,
said,
there's literary features of this story that make it sound like he talked to her. But I was gonna say, like, look, all these are just like little points you're making. I'm just trying to say there's a general good case here. Like most scholars would agree that the death happened, that the apostles at least believed that they saw the risen Jesus, right? And that Paul was converted.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
So this
perfectly
is
that's perfectly explainable through naturalistic phenomenon. All that's really required for this myth to start is one, for Jesus to be crucified, two, for Peter to have a bereavement hallucination, and then three, for the other Christians to experience a collective delusion. That's perfectly. We have several examples of this. That's
collective
perfectly.
delusion is a very difficult theory to make work here because it's not a very common thing. It's not, and also the way that they all kind of tell the same story. Collective delusions don't really.
Are you
They
Catholic?
generally are not. No, I'm not.
What do you think about the
But
miracle
yeah,
of the sun?
those stories. If you're talking about Guadalupe and stories like that, well, those stories are not like they're not all telling the same event. They're not all talking about the same kind of.
Well, no, there are allegedly thousands of witnesses for the miracle of the sun.
Yeah, but some of them will say there's a woman in the sky. Some of them will say that there was the sun. So they have different like different testimonies. Right? Whereas here you have this. Hold on. Where are you?
So if the testimony,
Wait.
so wait a minute. If the testimonies, if the testimonies have different.
say.
Wait,
Toronto. Hold on. You gotta let Dalton also jab in because you don't want me to unburden like I just did, and you're not able to answer everything. Dalton's got to press.
I just wanted to finish my point, but okay, fair enough. Okay, go ahead.
You made an important point. You made an important point, Toronto, that if there's differences in the testimonies, then it's quite unreliable. What about the differences in the Gospels?
They're very minor, and we can discuss those as well. I don't think they're contradictions as you're claiming. The differences in the Gospels are not comparable to this, where some people see a sun or a brightness in the sky. Some people see a woman. Other people see like there's very vastly different testimonies from sightings like Guadalupe and things like that. And this is like
women,
by the way, this is like over a period of time.
What about the women went and told no one, and then the very next gospel says they went and told everyone?
Well,
like,
Derek,
completely opposites.
I would disagree with you that Mark ends there at 16.
So you think the
I can prove it.
Oh, you don't think the ending?
No, you can't prove it. Like, look, don't get into all this.
I can.
I think you just distract me from the point here.
No,
what are you going to prove? That Mark ends at 16a? You're going to prove that? How are you going to prove that?
Yeah, by going to the oldest manuscripts.
Yeah, the
oldest manuscripts isn't proof. Oldest manuscripts doesn't mean that they're the best.
So there's no manuscripts early on that have it.
No. Wait. There. Derek, you're not understanding textual criticism, how this works. Okay.
I'm not understanding.
Yeah, the texts that have them, the older texts, right? Such as
Alexander. Do not have them. Do not.
I know. I understand. I understand that, Derek. I understand that 100%. Okay.
Okay.
What I'm saying to you is that doesn't prove that those texts are better or that they have the correct.
It shows you there are traditions that are earlier than our physical evidence suggests, where there is no longer ending. There's no 19 or 9 through 20. There is no 9 through 20 verses. That is a evidential observation all three of us can make and go, you know what? Someone added this on. Then if you add in linguistics.
No, not necessarily. Derek, hold on a second.
No, but I'm saying that's why we can look at it and go, this is convincing.
Why? I don't think it's convincing. Look, the narrative, narrative is weird. To end off the narrative right there is very strange.
I'll pull up.
It makes the whole story of the book just sounds weird at that point.
No, it doesn't. Well, let's not talk about weird because the whole book is weird regardless. There's a weird.
No. As a narrative, as a narrative.
As a narrative from someone who has a background in Judaism, the Gospels are weird regardless.
Yeah.
But if we take a look at here, can you pull up I have Mark.
You have that. Sorry, let me pull that up. Yeah, go ahead.
There we go. There we go. This is the Gospel of Mark. This isn't like it's not like it's like torn up and therefore it's like, oh, maybe it had a longer ending, but it's just damaged. This is like a really well preserved manuscript here, manuscript 3, and it just
What?
ends in
Yes.
verse 8.
Okay.
Which,
Yes.
why
What I'm
why aren't
saying,
why don't they have any of the why is it that
I don't
up
know.
until
but
the
it's
4th
interesting.
century they just end at verse 8?
No, it's not. No, we don't know this up until the 4th century. We don't know that.
We
What
do.
We know
We
is
do
that
we do
no,
know that.
No, we do not. We do not know that. What we know is
Every
the
single
evidence.
manuscript,
Excuse me.
every,
Stop
every
interrupting me.
single
Can I
well
please make a point?
every
Can I please make a
single
point?
manuscript
Wow,
prior to
dude.
the 4th
Wow.
century CE does
Ridiculous.
not contain the longer ending
Yeah,
of Mark.
they don't have any manuscript evidence of this before. Anyway, all they have is just a few, like a handful, literally a handful,
And none of them have it.
manuscripts with these, right?
Yeah, but none of them
No,
have
what I'm saying, and they're all from Egypt. They're all from Alexandria and that Alexandrian tradition. Okay,
Every
the other
single
ones,
one of the manuscripts you're saying that are early that exist at all are only from Alexandria.
no, yeah, the ones that don't have the ones that are early and don't have the Mark ending, the late Mark ending,
Only
they're
from
all
Alexandria.
they're all from the Alexandrian
Up
tradition.
to what
Every single
year?
one of them.
When do you say that the earliest manuscript tradition inserts verses 9 through 20? And this isn't even.
I think 9 through 20. I think 9 through 20 is original, right? But what I think is that the Byzantine tradition, right?
Why would they
which
remove it?
preserved that. Because I don't know what happened over there. Maybe they had low grade qualities. For example, those texts, the text he just showed you, and the other
That was
text,
high quality.
Aleph,
That was a high quality
Aleph,
manuscript I just showed
excuse
you.
me. Aleph and Sinaiticus are both rife with errors. However, when you look at the Byzantine tradition, right? Those manuscripts, they're like so pristinely copied, Derek. They have
The one I just showed you is pristinely copied, and it
But-
doesn't contain the
No, it
long
isn't.
ending.
What was that? What was that? Sinaiticus? Was that Sinaiticus? What was it,
Let's
Bible
see.
guy?
Let's take a look.
What was the copy you just showed me? Was it
I
Sinaiticus
think
or not?
that looked like it could have been, but I'm not sure if it's I'm not sure.
Anyway,
But
look,
I do want to
those
say
Alexandrian ones, man, they're full of errors. They're thousands of errors, dude. Whereas
Mhm.
if you look at these Byzantine copies, right? They're pristinely
Oh, yes.
copied. They have some errors.
There are no
That's
errors in the Byzantine copy.
I didn't say that. I did not say that. Do not put
So
words in my mouth.
Toronto, real quick. I want to look internally at chapter 16, and I really, if I'd have known this would have come up, I'd have done some brush up on some material here. But at the very beginning of this, in verse 2, very early on the first day of the week, he already gives you the time of the week, right? We know it's the first day of the week. Okay. You scroll down, he is risen. They went and told no one, for they were afraid. Scholars have noticed this weird insertion. When Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, dude, you just said it was the first day of the week, like literally 7 verses earlier. You don't have to say it's the first day of the week again. And there are so many things in this 9 through 20 that critics, scholars, academics, when I say critics, I'm not talking about atheist agnostics. I'm talking about textual critics who know this material in Greek, have identified and said, this literally is an insertion added later with awareness of the book of Acts. It knows about the snakes and stuff that's going on. It's not anyways. This is important data because you just said like as if we don't have evidence to really suggest why this was inserted.
No. What I'm saying to you, okay, look, even if you don't believe in the final ending, that 6 and 7 there, that ending, or 6, 7, and 8 there, implies the resurrection. You have the angel there saying that he's going to rise, that he's risen, etc. Right?
Of course, it's saying his body's out of the tomb. This is Mark, not Paul. What he was saying earlier was that we're dealing with Pauline theology, which we don't know, and I don't really care at the end of the day if the body is understood to be physical or not physical in Paul. Personally, I'm just telling you my honest opinion. I do know that Steve Mason, James Tabor, other academics, brilliant, do think it's a pneumatic body. They do not think it's a physical body. They do think it's a transformed body. And so much so that even James Tabor thinks that the corpse could have been there and they would have still believed he rose from the dead because it was pneumatic, not about the flesh. However, Mark does have a body missing from the tomb. And so, yes, it's implied that he has an apotheosis. He has been taken up. He has gone up in some way, shape, or form. The fact that his body's missing in the Gospel of Mark. We don't read this material and walk away going, yeah, I'm convinced of it the same way I would read Apollonius or any other mythic claim. We were talking about earlier with Romulus ascending to heaven and an eyewitness who swears that they were actually visited by Romulus after he had gone up to heaven. I'm not moved by it. I get why Christians believe, but I feel like that you're doing apologetics for your belief.
Well, I mean, you always say that. You always try to like mind read me, dude.
Well,
I'm not trying to mind read you.
I think it's important to make the point though, because you didn't.
No, why is that important? I'm not mind reading. I'm not trying to mind read you. I'm just saying your evidence is not that strong. For example,
okay, let me stillman you then. Let me ask you then. Did you become a Christian because you just sat down and actually went, you know what? The empirical evidence seems to suggest this. You didn't have an emotional experience and confirming your belief in Jesus?
Well, actually, my journey to Christianity was fairly like logical. It was based on a logical assessment.
You just
of evidence.
studied the Bible and that no experience.
No, I didn't study the Bible. What I did was I was studying like science and why I don't believe science. I understand science certainly contradicts the Bible as it is right now, but
yeah, because the Earth's not
flat. I would say that, for example, when we look at like metaphysics and the origin of everything, or the reason why there is a universe at all, the science has nothing to say, and that a necessary being seems to explain it better than science. And so,
but the Bible, the science,
excuse me, can I just?
But the science does contradict the Bible on the shape of the Earth, correct?
Of course, yeah, of course. That's not the point, though. No, well, the Bible doesn't really say the Earth is flat either. You know, it doesn't. Really
it does. It does.
No, it doesn't.
So you're gonna go to the.
Anyway, the Bible doesn't make. Anyway, that's ridiculous.
We keep moving. Every
changing
time.
the subject. Yeah, no, I'm not. Look, I was trying to respond to your question. I was trying to respond to your question, and this guy keeps interrupting me.
Yeah, well, right? I'm interrupting too, and you're interrupting too. We're all interrupting, but here's
we're all
the deal.
interrupting. But
look, I'm reading your mind. You're claiming he's interrupting, but you're interrupting too. Come on. So everybody's guilty. Everybody's guilty. Now let's get somewhere with this. Why should me and Dalton become Christians?
Yeah, because I'm trying to say, like, what you're trying to do when I'm trying to point out this like body of evidence. You're nitpicking, right?
You have
to.
It's
not.
It's an extremely high claim you want us to buy, and also buy into the idea that there is a hell, there is a heaven. We have to base our whole life on this system that you believe in. That's a high standard. That if I said to you today, Toronto, I want you to believe this, and you go, well, what's the evidence? And I go, but before I give you the evidence, here's what you're going to have to do. You need to live your life like this. You need to change this kind of behavior. You need to in order to be this person, right? It's going to change all these things about your life. It's going to be a life-altering worldview I'm about to give you. You better have some damn good evidence to convince me that I really need to change what I believe, who I am, and how I behave and what I do. It needs to be really, really good, in my opinion, for me to be persuaded. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there is good evidence though. This is what I'm saying to you. But you're like, I don't know, like the way you attack the evidence for the resurrection, right? You find out like these things,
like contradictions.
No, you don't. No, not contradictions. You don't find contradictions.
I do find contradictions.
We do find contradictions. And again, we've already gone down the road of contradictions. And again, when it comes to, for example, Paul, and when it comes to Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, we don't know anything about the nature of Jesus's appearance to people. As far as you and I know, it could just as well be that 500 Christians were sitting in a room praying and fasting, and they felt Jesus's presence with them, and thus Jesus appeared to them. You don't know anything about the 500. You don't know their names. You don't know when this happened. You don't know where this happened. You don't know in what manner Jesus appeared to them. All you have is this phrase that could be interpreted as simply the same way you would interpret like a Pentecostal movement where Jesus appears to people.
No, I don't think you're right about that. Like, for example, in the Jewish world, that would have been very unusual to see some kind of resurrection claim. And then also, like, they thought of the resurrection as the end of time, you know? They didn't think of it as this.
Well, they thought it was the end of time. The Christians of the first
come on,
century
now you're just no, dude, no, we're not talking about.
They thought they were living in the last days. Toronto. No, I'm not. No, Toronto. I'm not.
You literally just said end of time, Toronto, and then Dalton's trying to talk, and you're cutting him off.
No, because
Yeah.
he's trying to say, look,
Here,
they didn't
Toronto.
look. The
What's he
people
trying to
before
say?
They saw him. Look, before they saw him, he's trying to say that early Christians believed that they were living at the end of
They
time.
did.
However,
They did.
before the resurrection, they weren't Christians. They thought their Messiah died. They wouldn't
They
have
still
believed.
thought that Jewish people
Why would they
in the
believe
first
that? Why would
century,
they believe that?
because
believe-
Toronto, listen,
What a joke.
Jewish people
What?
in the first century CE thought they were living in the last
No, they
days.
didn't.
They were
No, they
expecting.
didn't.
Yes,
No,
they
they
did.
didn't.
They
That wasn't like
absolutely
a
did.
general
Why?
belief. That was like a widespread belief.
Toronto.
Prove that. Prove
Did
that.
Jewish
Prove
Toronto,
that was a widespread belief.
Toronto. I'm
Prove that.
going to try to do it if you'd stop talking.
Okay.
Did Jewish people in the first century CE were they expecting the coming of the Messiah in their days?
Some. Sure. Some.
So,
Okay.
like the Pharisees, for example, they believed the Messiah was coming
Not
in the
all
last
of them.
days.
Not all of them. Not all of them. Not all of
What
them.
the Essenes, when we take a look at even from the Gospel's
The
own
Essenes,
perspective,
they didn't know when it was going to happen, dude. They didn't think it was going to happen.
the Essenes thought
The
the
Essenes
teacher of
didn't know.
righteousness.
They didn't all think it was going to happen in their
okay,
lifetime.
Toronto. I got to get
Yeah,
my point out. Toronto.
If you can't let
Jesus
him in,
Christ.
he's gonna have to mute you. We don't want to have to do that, Toronto. We got to be able to. You got to let him get his point, and we can't interrupt, or it's no fun. And the viewers are complaining too, or the people in the comments are saying, "Hey, man, one point at a time. Let's allow this because look, we want to do this in the future too. This ain't the last time we're gonna have conversations."
True.
Go ahead,
True.
So what we see is that there are Jewish people in the first century. It doesn't matter how many, as long as there are Jews in the first century that believe in the last days. Early Christians, prior to becoming Christian, could have just belonged to that kind of sect of Judaism. Even from the Gospels, they're expecting the Messiah to come. They see John the Baptist and they ask, "Are you the Messiah?" They're expecting a Messiah to come. Judas the Galilean, people thought maybe he was the Messiah. That's why he did what he did. So Jesus, his followers think he's the Messiah. The Messiah is supposed to come in the last days. That's why even the author of the book of Hebrews says, in these last days, he has spoken to us through his son. So yes, they thought that the resurrection, that Jesus was just the first fruits of the resurrection, and the resurrection was in the last days, which they thought they were living in.
Okay, I don't know. This is way off the topic, but the fact is, if they thought he died, they did not think he was the Messiah. They would not have had this idea of the Messiah is coming back at the end of the days. There here, So the whole idea that the end times thought in their head would have allowed them to believe in the resurrection is just like ridiculous. Like the resurrection idea, the resurrection of the Messiah alone and not all the dead at the same time would have been completely alien to them. They wouldn't have thought of it that way.
How do you know
they did
that?
not think of it. Well, we can see it in the word. We can see it in the word. In the book, he repeatedly tells them he's going to rise from the dead. It says they don't understand. They don't believe him. John 20 verse 9 says that they did not know the scripture that he would rise from the dead. Mm-hmm. They repeatedly, the first century.
Okay, but in reality, though, you're talking about what the Gospels say. In reality, though, what did Jewish people actually believe?
Yeah. Why would we think that they would think that the Messiah would rise from the dead individually, as opposed to the other resurrection?
That might be why Christianity.
What evidence do we have of that?
I can actually make an argument from this. In fact, I recently talked to Dr. Richard Carrier about this, that there could have possibly been some Christians that would have understood Daniel chapter 12. Toronto. No, Toronto.
No, why? Wait.
Toronto, after I'm done, you can make your. After you're done, you can make your. After I'm done, you can make your point. As I was saying, I've spoken to Dr. Richard Carrier this last week, and I've shown that it's even a possibility that Jewish people reading Daniel chapter 12 could have understood the Michael figure rising to be a reference to the Messiah rising. And then what happens after that? Then you see the rest of the dead resurrected. It's quite possible for early Christians to read Daniel chapter 12 and think that this is justification for the Messiah rising first. Not only that, if Peter does have a bereavement hallucination where he sees Jesus standing before him, he has two options. He can either believe that Jesus is just a spirit and therefore God abandoned him to death, or cognitive dissonance. I'm seeing Jesus in my this hallucination. God has vindicated him and raised him from the dead, and he's just the first of many.
Okay, so what you're saying now is that it's possible that they did this. There's no evidence of this, but it's possible. It's possible. And you're trying to act as if that possibility is enough to just dismiss this whole body of evidence.
Oh, and let me ask you something, Toronto. Let me ask you about your question you just brought up that I think is important. Is it possible that Nero really did rise from the dead?
Nero?
Yeah, Nero. Nero, the Emperor Nero. Nero Caesar.
Oh, no, I don't think so. But okay,
So
what's your point?
you don't think it's
There's
possible?
some stories. There's some stories about that. Well,
Historically, there were 3 imposters that literally got away with pretending to be Nero after he committed suicide. He
they
killed himself.
pretended that they were him.
They pretended they were him, and everyone believed he was alive. He rose from the dead. Nero Redivivus. It's a legend that he was alive.
Did they have
And
an
by the
empty
way,
tomb?
they didn't need one. They
Well-
had Nero, the guy himself, impersonating
They
him.
never checked his
but
tomb. They never
many of
checked his tomb.
Jesus
Okay.
doesn't have an empty tomb, Toronto. Can you point me to a
right.
tomb?
Yeah, right.
Can you point me to the empty tomb? Where is it?
I don't know, but even his enemies are admitting it. The Jews. And
No,
others
no.
at the
Where are his enemies admitting there's an empty tomb? Show me a Jewish source that says that there was an empty tomb.
Celsus, the Jews in the Talmud, they say.
Where in the Talmud?
I don't know, when they talk about how he rose as a sorcerer or something. They don't deny the resurrection. They don't deny that.
No,
that
no,
there's
they don't mention the resurrection at all in the Talmud. All they say about Jesus
Well, in
possibly
Matthew-
is that he was a sorcerer that led Israel astray, and that he was stoned to death and then hung up on a tree on the Passover. That's it. They don't say anything about empty tomb in the Talmud.
Real quick, Mindwise, thank you for the super chat. As I
they
think
talk about-
Sagan, peace be upon him,
Sure.
said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. D&D, what a knockout combo. P.S. Dinner was good, I take. Fantastic, Mindwise. Thank you so much for helping out. The wife had an amazing birthday, and we appreciate the support. Thank you.
Okay, he says extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Well, in the evidence we have from ancient world events in the ancient world, there's nothing more extraordinary than the New Testament documents.
Well,
by
that's why I
far.
brought up Nero. Because I wanted
it's not even comparable. Who's ever heard of that? We never even heard of that. However, with
What do you
Jesus,
mean?
Well, you
everyone's
haven't heard Toronto. You
didn't
haven't
know
heard
yeah,
of it.
yeah, you two who spend your whole lives trying to disprove the Bible, you've heard of it.
I actually
no one else has.
let me make a point here to disprove the Bible. You might have a fair assessment to some extent that I have gone out of my way to try to test the validity of a world religion that once had its claws in my brain and in my life, and how I was supposed to view myself as this wretch whose righteousness is like filthy rags with a God who might cook me for all eternity. And stuff. That's a huge fucking fucking thing to claim on someone. And if someone's going to research that and find out that it's loaded with legend, it's got contradictions, which you deny. It's got problems.
I don't think,
I know you deny them, but I'm making the point that when you discover that, you kind of want to know if this is true. You don't want to just come on to channels and just try to justify the thing you already believe. Like, I've changed my mind, Toronto. I was a full-blown absolute mythicist, okay? And I'm not knocking people who think that Jesus may not have existed, but I have changed my mind because I thought, you know what? I am, at this moment in my journey, more persuaded there was a guy than there wasn't. So in my mind, I'm like, look, I want to go with the evidence. I want to go where the evidence seems to point.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this to be facetious, but yeah, this commenter has a good point. Examusic's right. If you don't know about the Neuro Redivivus myth, you won't know what you're reading in the Apocalypse of John.
No. Wait. First of all, no. That's a wild claim too. This is what I'm saying to you, Derek. You're taking this thing about Nero and trying to say that's how we should understand the Gospel of John.
No, I'm not.
That's wild.
Gospel of John.
Okay. I mean the resurrection.
No,
I'm
talking about the Apocalypse of John.
Yeah.
There are with the beast, literally the beast himself.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that whole argument. But that what you're saying,
you didn't even know about Nero though.
You're going from the idea that he rose from the dead. I know who Nero was. You're saying the idea that he supposedly had these people who witnessed his risen body. All right, so that happened,
bro.
That we need to use that. To
Nero Redivivus was so intense. This was such a serious claim in the ancient world that the empire itself was concerned that he literally was alive. People in the empire thought he was where the Parthians, their enemies, started to believe that Nero really was alive. He came back and that he was going to lead the Parthian Empire to destroy the Roman Empire. This was something that people believed. Now, we come to find out there were fraudsters pretending to be Nero. And the reason I brought this up, and I was hoping you would have known about it, but
Mhm.
you don't really know much about it, I'd request you look into it more, because people can claim things all the time. People could say they believe in things all the time. It doesn't
Yes.
it doesn't mean they did, is all I'm saying.
This is my point. This is my point. It's my point, Derek. People did used to talk about other people rising from the dead all the time in the ancient world. And even people that were healers, people that were the sons of the god Apollonius, right? Apollonius of Tyre, right? But the thing is,
Diana.
the only or whatever he's from, but the people, nobody like has heard of those people except for people like us who know about the history. Who know
Yeah,
about
Toronto,
that
you're
period. The
so
average,
what? The
hold on,
popularity of the myth makes it more likely to be true.
Wait, dude, could you please hold on a sec? Just hold on a sec. My point is this: none of those other events have entire biographies about the person written within 100 years. None of those other events have like
Plutarch,
these. Hold on a sec.
life
Plutarch,
of the
what?
Caesars.
What? Plutarch? Yeah. Where's his Life of the Caesars? Written like 200 years later. And also, first of all,
Hold
hold on
on.
a sec.
Plutarch lived at the end of the 1st century. What do you
Oh,
mean?
is that right?
Yeah. It's not 200 years. And if
Oh,
you're trying to
right,
bring
right.
up the Apollonius of
No,
Tyana's biography, was
even
written by-
that. Look at that. Let's look at Plutarch and the Caesars.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Plutarch writes it 100 years or whatever after Caesar. Okay, he writes about them.
beginning
right?
of the 2nd century, like around the 110s, Plutarch
But
writes.
no, what I was
Yeah.
saying, well, we're talking about people who supposedly rose from the dead, and that their writings.
What
and
about
that
people
those
who
events
ascended to
became
heaven?
famous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but this is what I'm saying. The average person's never heard of those people, but Jesus, everyone's heard of. Why does that
Again, this is
happen? And also,
Toronto.
hold on a sec.
Toronto. This is just because
wait.
Christianity has spread throughout the whole world because of
Why though?
of Constantine.
Why?
Because of Constantine.
Well, yeah, but why does Constantine take up this religion? This is the thing. You're saying all these
It
things.
was useful.
Like, does this naturally
It was
happen?
useful. It was useful.
Yeah,
to him.
again, that's it.
Yeah.
That's your claim, and that's another debatable claim.
So his mom was also a Christian too, just so you know. Like his mom was. So there's plenty of
I know.
common sense arguments to make why Constantine. And by the way, there's a debate even whether or not he was really solely devoted to Christianity. He may have still worshipped Sol Invictus and Christianity at the same time.
Yeah, my point is though that religion of these Jews from this backwater of the Roman Empire takes over the empire.
Right. What about these Arabs in the back? What about these Arabs in the backwater of Mecca who take over the world within a century?
Yeah.
Like
again, they're using the Christian mythos. They're basing it on that.
The Christians are using the Jewish, and the Jewish are using the Mesopotamian mythos. I mean,
but the Jews were like nothing. That's the thing. They were like the small little
neither
group
were the
there.
Canaanites, but the Canaanites borrowed from
Christians. No, wait, no. That's a whole other argument, dude.
No, that's a fact. Literally, Yahweh.
No, dude, come on, man. Now you're just
Isaiah 27. Have you read the ball cycle?
Look, I don't think it's borrowing. I think what they're doing is they're kind of like responding.
Borrowing and reworking it is borrowing.
I don't know. No, that's not the same thing, man. They're kind of like trying to polemicize against the
right. You can't do that without using that prior work. You can't polemicize the material.
Yeah, but that's not. It's not all. Yeah, but also, dude, it's not all. Yeah, but dependent, like imagine like the whole book of Isaiah. You're trying to say this one little section means that the book is dependent on the Canaanite religion.
Oh no, there's lots of reasons to believe that. There's lots. Here,
you guys don't understand how weak your arguments are. Like,
okay, I'm
Toronto.
I'm getting so tired of the over talking.
Come on.
So there are tons of reasons for us to believe that the Israelites were just another group of Canaanites. So far, all we've got in this conversation is you believe in the resurrection because of the Gospels. Now, we have good reasons to think that the Gospels are mythic in nature. When they contradict each other they can't even agree on what day Jesus was crucified on. Then you have Paul's testimony. All Paul says is that people appeared to him. Nothing about an empty tomb. It doesn't even corroborate with what the Gospels say. Is this really the best you have? And also the popularity of Christianity. Do you think that this is the best you have for why we should become Christians? Oh, sorry.
Let me ask you guys this: what would convince you guys that you're wrong about all your claims about the NT?
Different evidence than what we have right now. I would
Different
be
evidence. What does that? What does that mean, Derek?
like
What does
I
that
would
mean?
like
It's not our
bear
job to
evidence.
figure out. It's not our job to do your homework. It's your job to figure
No,
out.
no, no.
how
You
to
should
figure it
have
out.
some kind of falsifiability.
I do.
No,
I
I
do.
don't.
I have something I would
What
like
do you
to
mean?
say.
What do you mean you don't?
Let,
What a joke.
let
Go ahead.
me
Go ahead.
let Dalton may have been wanting to say something that wasn't necessarily the conclusion you're probably about to draw. Here's the deal. I read the Gospels. If a son asks his father for some bread, will he give him a stone? Right? When you pray and ask Abba, Father in heaven, and you're asking for him to really do something and it doesn't happen and he's silent, you might ask, is he there? Okay, basic stuff like that. And when you read the stories of him countlessly involving himself in the natural world, not in the invisible outside space and time place that Christians have made him hide, because he's not here for us to see, test, observe, and actually experience in that way. You can experience them if you want inside in religious experience context. But he has actively, according to the revelation of these texts, inserted himself into human history in ways that he could easily do right now to falsify me and Dalton, and we would be forced to change our minds about this. And when we go, well, why doesn't he do that? Just all he'd have to do is do that. And you go, well, that's the mind of God. God has different plans. You don't want it to be true, whatever excuse it might be. And it's like, dude, there have been many situations in the Bible where non-believers are present, people who are not the believer of the God of Israel. The God of Israel has stepped in and done things. And it's really easy to change my mind. Like right now, something could happen right here behind the pool in my mother-in-law's house right now. She could be right here, right now on camera. And guess what?
Man.
I promise you, I would out-Christian you any day of the week if this shit was real and it happened and there was some way that it happened. I'd be like, no, Toronto, we got to make this serious, okay?
I know.
I'll tell you this.
Thing.
I'll tell you this,
Can I
Toronto.
just
Here's
respond
here's an example of what you could do that would absolutely convince me of the veracity of Christianity. If you could have 50 individuals who documented have an illness, like it's medical documentation proving that they have an illness, and if you had a Christian who was able to pray for all of them and they were all healed, like on the spot, they were healed,
Yeah, well,
one after the other, that would
Christianity doesn't even claim that that's a thing that could happen. The Bible doesn't say
did Jesus not do that? Did Jesus actually Jesus did say that. Jesus did say that.
No, he did. No, he
Jesus said these. Actually, Jesus said these works that I do, you will do. You will do greater works than these.
He was talking to the 11.
Are you not a disciple of Jesus?
It ends
He's
at the
clearly
11.
talking to his 11. Huh?
It ends at the 11.
No, he was talking to the 11 when he said that. When he said that,
I know, but are you a cessationist that believes the miracles have stopped?
Oh yeah, I am. Yeah, I am.
You are okay.
No. I'm talking about apostolic miracles, and that has been the position of the church throughout most of human history.
No,
it hasn't.
No.
Yes, it has. Yes, it absolutely has.
Oh my
I'm
I'm
not gonna let this fly. As an ex-Catholic, I know for a fact that throughout Catholic history, they have pointed to miracles being performed by saints. This has not been the majority view of Christians throughout history.
Okay, can I talk now?
And by the way, you can't
differentiating this from
friendly thing here, Toronto. People can mute if they want. They can mute by paying. We could use the money. Just saying. So if they want to mute, and then
Robin, pay up, Robin, pay up.
Pay up, and we can mute TBS. So if you want to pay up, we'll mute them and we'll talk. But Valena, thank you so much for the super chat as well. By stat, if so many people saw him, it's not halluc, and I think they mean hallucination.
Just be clear to Valena, no one is making the claim that the 500 simultaneously all hallucinated Jesus. All that's required to meet the requirement of 1 Corinthians 15 verse 6 is for 500 Christians to be gathered together and to simply feel his presence, as the Greek word ophthe has a large semantic range that includes not just visual sight but an inward perception as well.
Yeah, anyway. Again, that doesn't really explain 1 Corinthians 15, because doesn't explain why people like James and Paul would even see the risen Jesus. Like, why they're skeptics, right? They're not religious.
We
observer.
don't know what led to Paul having his first one, James. We don't know that James
Exactly.
was a skeptic.
We don't.
Also, we don't know that James was a skeptic. That's a fact you get from the Gospels, and me and Derek don't necessarily accept the Gospels as being historically accurate. On top of that, when it comes to
You don't
Paul,
accept anything.
we don't
The
Toronto. On top of that, we don't know what sort of events led to Paul having his inward revelation. So we can't make any claim on that.
And I would also
he
add
tells
to
the
that,
story.
just so when you say skeptic, I don't think they were anything like what me and Dalton are necessarily. I think they were already primed. Hold on, let me finish. I think they were already primed to believe in a resurrection, being Jews to begin with, and they were apocalyptic. So hear me out.
Again.
So hear me out.
Okay.
If you're already primed to believe that in the last days a resurrection is supposed to take place, it's evident they were apocalyptic, then you're already primed to believe. You got to let me finish, dude. If not, everybody, $1 a minute. Mute him for $1 a minute. If you want to super chat, you can. I don't want to have to, but dude, if they want to super chat $1 a minute, we can silence TBS. So hear me out. They already had the belief of resurrection. They're not complete skeptics. They just did not believe that the Messiah was going to get killed, or that this particular idea of the Messiah. So they already were religious Jews who believed in God. They weren't atheists. That's not a skeptic, in my opinion. They might have been skeptical of that particular guy, but that's it.
Okay, but they believed in a general resurrection, dude. Not one Messiah being resurrected. They didn't believe in that.
Really? Have you read the Talmud? Have you read the Talmud?
The Talmud is later, dude. We're not talking about that. We're talking about first century Jews.
But does the Talmud not reflect what Jewish people in the Second Temple believe?
No. Why would I think that?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
2 minutes, you're muted.
So this is another crazy claim. So here's the problem with Christians, and this is a message to all Christians out there: don't make claims about Judaism if you don't know jack shit about Judaism. I have practiced Catholicism and Judaism at different times in my life, which is why I'm able to make these claims. Yes, what we have in the Talmud, they're not just the beliefs about Jews had in the 4th century CE. The Talmud is reflecting beliefs that go back all the way to the 1st century BCE. That's why you have characters like Rabbi Hillel, Rabbi Shammai, in the Talmud. Rabbi Hillel and Rabbi Shammai, they weren't 4th century individuals. They existed in the 1st century CE. The Talmud talks about netilat yadayim, the washing of the hands. That's literally in the Gospels. They talk about the washing of the hands. So yes, the Talmud does reflect what Jewish people in the Second Temple did believe about messiahs and resurrection. So when we have, for example, in the Talmud, the Mashiach ben Yosef, who is a Messiah individual who is resurrected as an individual, that's something that's already present. Also, we have Elijah resurrecting an individual person. So there's that. Derek, did you want to say something?
Dude, I hope my computer does not cut out on me. We got 47 seconds. I'm just relishing in it just because I appreciate everybody sending in super chats. I think I think, and I've heard this before, that, well, they would have not believed in an individual who resurrected, that they came back from the dead. I would need to brush up on the scholars that I've read on this, who actually point out an interesting overlap between the Greco-Roman world and the Jews at the time. Hellenistic thought has penetrated the Jewish world. And yes, there were individuals who had apotheosis. In the Jewish context, apotheosis and resurrection often were conflated. So we do have an individual like Moses, who is said in the Old Testament to have died. And then, let me unmute Toronto here. To have died and not be taken up to heaven. But Josephus says he was taken up to heaven. So that's an odd thing, that he gets an ascension to heaven, but he doesn't get that in scripture. Josephus is talking about this. So we really do need to look at the historical background, is all I would say, on how did Jews understand this material in the 1st century, and would it have been odd to have an individual as the first fruits to the general resurrection? I don't know. I don't know how weird or rare that would be.
Well, okay, there's a lot of things going on here, but I would just say that, like I say, there was lots of stories about resurrections at the time, but the Jewish concept of it was end times resurrection. Now, if Josephus tells his story, I'm not familiar with that, but that's interesting. But he's recording events that other people have witnessed, right, or claim to have witnessed, and he's telling about it. He's not just making something up that he's not just talking about some like random Jewish thing. And also the
Just,
idea that the
just,
hold on. The idea that the Talmud,
just like
wow.
Christians today,
Wow.
just like Christians today, and of every century since the first century, Jewish people thought that they were living in the last days.
Again, that wasn't some universal belief that they all had. You're just
Doesn't matter.
The New
Doesn't
Testament.
matter.
Well, it does matter. It absolutely does matter. And also, I don't even know.
As long as there's any group of Jewish people that believe that they were living in the last days, that gives enough room for Christians in the first century to believe that, and for them to have a reason to believe that the resurrection was beginning.
Enough room for you to possibly make this other inference about this other thing. This is what I'm saying.
It's not an inference.
Theories
The
about
New
Your
Testament,
theory,
it's not an inference. The New Testament,
of course,
the
it's
New
an
Testament,
inference.
the New Testament.
This is what inference means, dude.
Itself
Come
says
on, man.
explicitly. The New Testament itself explicitly states that the Christians thought they were living in the last days.
Yes, and you're suggesting that anyway. Look, this is all over the place because you don't have a solid critique. You have these like little nitpicks that you pull out. What you were saying about the Talmud, as if it's like some window to the first century Jewish thought. When it's a layered compilation. It has different views, different things. The Babylonian Talmud and
who commissioned the Talmud?
Who commissioned it? I don't know. It comes from different works, man. They compile different works. Like I don't know what you mean with commission.
But before,
I don't even know what
who is the leader? Who is the leader who started the writing of the Talmud?
I don't know.
Judah Hanasi. Yehuda Hanasi, Judah the Prince. What was the Talmud called?
So where was he from? Where was he from? What era was he from? Was he from the first century? No, right?
Doesn't matter. I'm proving a point right now.
What do you mean it doesn't matter?
Toronto. I'm proving a point right now, and it's really funny. So Toronto, before the Talmud is like the Talmud in the 5th century CE, what do we call this body of works as it existed in the 2nd and 3rd century? The corpus of the oral tradition. What is it called?
The
Mishnah. And then it gets added. And what gets added to the Mishnah?
The Mishnah is compiled in 200 CE. And then you have the Bavli text that goes later on than that. So why should I think that all this stuff comes from the first?
What's the difference between? What's the difference? I think what we're proving is that you don't know anything about the Talmud.
We got a super chat.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in the Talmud. I don't have to be. The fact that you're trying to claim that it's some window into the first century.
Gretchen, I had to mute you, man. All right, we're getting 5 minutes on the clock here. Me and 5 minutes. Testing Toronto's patience here. Thank you so much for the super chat. TBS, you're the one all over the place like a Jackson Pollock. Mute TBS. All right, you see the clock. Let's talk about this while Toronto here is hanging out waiting. What like I don't know what to say about this. It sounds like to me, and once we unmute, maybe Toronto can answer this. Like he doesn't think the New Testament seems to be implying that they believe they were living in the end, like the end times. Do you think that that's what's happening, Dalton?
Well, when we look at the book of the Hebrews, the author of Hebrews obviously thinks he's living in the last days. He says in Hebrews chapter 1, he says, long ago, God spoke to our ancestors in many and various ways by the prophets, but in these last days, he has spoken to us by a son. The author of the book of Hebrews believes that they are living in a new sort of, if you will, to use Christian slang, dispensation, a new era, a new epoch, because the Messiah ushers in the Messianic age. This is also another Jewish belief. The book of Revelation talks about the things which must shortly come to pass, including Jesus' return. Paul seems to believe that Jesus is returning in his lifetime. He says, those of us who are alive and remain, talking about Jesus' return. It's quite obvious. And also Jesus, the authors of the Gospel of Matthew even put into the mouth of Jesus, having him say that he will return before this generation has passed away. It's quite obvious that we have Jews in the 1st century CE who thought they were living in the last days, and therefore, and also quite clearly from reading the New Testament, that Christians believed that they were living in the last age, and they've thought they've living in the last days ever since then. Every generation thinks that they're living in the last days.
By the way, I can see the chat from Toronto's live stream. This is a shameless plug for you, Toronto, for being muted. I'll at least mention you have a YouTube channel. It's Toronto Bible Study. But he has fans in his audience. They're trying to make preterist points.
I'm anti-preterist.
And then how do these guys have platforms? Atheists can't be this dense. So it's kind of funny that coming from a Christian theological standpoint, they think that this is preterism because historical critical scholars identified that they had apocalyptic, fervent, end times apocalyptic expectations in the 1st century. And the entire New Testament, sure, if full preterist and partial preterist share the language of expectation that is near and soon, okay, then they get that part right. Where they're wrong is that it happened. And that is where we would come in and go, sorry, failed. That's apocalyptic expectation that failed. I just think it's funny to see your fans come in here and try to talk crap about us. Like, I know full preterism and partial preterism. I was both for many years. And once I discovered critical scholarship, I was like, man, why didn't I think this just failed? Why did that not dawn on me the whole time that they just had false expectations like every apocalyptic movement in history? So anyway, we got a minute and 30 to relish in this. Dalton, anything else you want to?
Yeah, and another clear example. Again, I'll give the same example I gave before because it's a clear example. The New Testament, if you read Mark chapter 7, Matthew chapter 15, we see an incident where the Pharisees are up Jesus's ass because he's not washing his hands before they eat. By the way, that's not something in the Torah. That's something that's part of the oral tradition of the Jewish people. And that oral tradition is elucidated in the Talmud. It's called Netilat Yadayim. It's practiced by Orthodox Jews to this day. So yes, the Talmud does give us a track on what 1st century Jews would have believed, because the Talmud isn't like we're coming up with traditions and we're writing them down. The whole purpose of the Talmud is because we the Jews are now in the diaspora. We have been keeping these traditions orally all this time, but now we need to write them down because we're in diaspora. That's the whole purpose of the writing of the Mishnah and later the addition of the Gemara, whether the Babylonian Gemara or the Jerusalem Gemara. The whole purpose for the writing of the Talmud in the first place was because this has been an oral tradition that we have kept. The New Testament attests to the existence of this oral tradition, calling it the tradition of the elders, and the Talmud is just finally writing down the discourse.
All
right, I'm going to cut you out 33 seconds early. There you
go. Okay. So anyway, the idea that the Talmud is some window into 1st century thinking is just completely ridiculous. Okay, you'd have to make some other further evidentiary claims beyond that. All right, because the fact is the Talmud is made up of the Mishnah and the Bavli texts. Bavli is not finalized until 600 CE.
What do you think Bavli is a reference to? What do you think Bavli is a reference to, Toronto?
I don't know. Isn't it all those like different debates they were having?
So after the Mishnah is composed, you get you have groups of Jewish people in Palestine who have further commentary on the Mishnah, and then on top of that, you have Jews in the region of Babylon who have further commentary on the Mishnah. The Jewish commentary on the Mishnah that's in Palestine is called the Jerusalem Gemara, and the Gemara as it exists in Babylon is called the Babylonian or the Bavli Gemara. When added together, it gives you two different Talmuds: the Jerusalem Talmud and the Talmud Bavli. The only difference between these two is not in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is the same. The difference is in the Gemara, or I guess the plural here would be Gemarot. The Gemarot would be that one is from Palestine, one is from Babylon. But my question to you, whenever it's time for you to become unmuted, is when do you? We have two figures that are mentioned in the Mishnah, and they are debating and doing discourse, and we have stories about them and their teachings. Those two individuals are called Hillel and Shammai. My question for you, when you unmute yourself, when you get unmuted, is when do you think that Shammai and Hillel lived? Because we do have their stories, we do have their teachings. In fact, one of the teachings that's quite popular from Hillel is the teaching that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. These two teachings summarize the Torah, and the rest is commentary. Go and do it. So the question will be, when do you think these two individuals, Hillel and Shammai, lived?
And I'm not going to distract from that question. I'm just going to say there's 18 seconds. I want to say thank you to all you out there super chatting and muting TBS when he's spewing BS. Okay, once you start talking, I'm not going to interrupt you, TBS. But if you want to mute, you can. $1 a minute. Taco gave me this idea.
Okay.
Oh, you're unmuted. Damn it. Okay.
I'm muted, right? Okay.
Go
So
ahead,
Hillel is like.
Thank you,
is like
Alan, for the super
110.
chat, by the way.
Hillel's like 100 years after 100 years CE Common Era, and Shammai would have been around then, or maybe around 50 to 60 years Common Era. So
before Jesus.
Shammai would have been wait. You're right. Shammai would have been slightly before the Common Era, but Hillel would have been after, at least 100 years or so.
No, they were contemporary. Shammai and Hillel lived at the same time. They were competing schools of thought in Judaism, and they both lived before. Their schools are already established by the time you get to the Jesus era. So like, if the Talmud is teaching, giving us the teaching, if the Talmud is giving us the teachings of Shammai and Hillel were from the first century. Conclusion, the Talmud gives us an eye into first century Jewish thought.
No, but they're not. They can't really confirm that those quotes are accurate and everything. There's that even Jewish sources won't claim that those are
the Holy Spirit inspired it. We'll just say that
sources.
Yeah, the same thing for the New Gospel.
So you're just like, come on, man. Like, wait, are you trying to take this as a serious? You're trying to make some serious arguments about history, right?
Your problems
when I point out the problem, hold on. When I point out the problems with your theory, you just ignore them or you laugh it off. Like, what are you doing?
Well, no, by that same metric, then we don't know what Jesus said.
No, that's a separate debate, dude. We're not talking about what we're talking about is your claim that the Talmud provides some kind of window into first century thought. Therefore, we can just assume that they thought that they were living in the last days, and by that you mean that the resurrection was right around the corner, which again, we don't need to think that. And your references to the New Testament were also weak too. Last days in the New Testament doesn't necessarily refer to the resurrection is right around the corner.
When does the resurrection take place?
Well, who knows? They're probably talking about their kind of already not yet theology, you know. And,
does the resurrection not take place in the last days?
Yeah, the last day doesn't mean it's happening tomorrow, though. That's what I'm saying to you.
Yeah, it could happen next week.
It could be 100 years. Or it could be 100 years or 1,000 years. Peter talks about how 1,000 years of the Lord is one day.
Then the term "last days" doesn't have any meaning whatsoever. It's a meaningless phrase. He talked about last days
in Peter. He talked about Peter. And also, what I'm saying to you is
the author.
Second Peter.
Dude, you just talk for so many minutes.
Well, yeah. I just want to say that isn't actually Peter. Second Peter is not Peter.
Oh, dude, come on, man. See, that's your claim,
dude. That's not just a like critical scholarly position. Many academics.
Yeah, sure.
Dude, even Eusebius questioned this, man. Like, I mean, this is. I agree. This was not that's not a really disputed one. That's a pretty common answer.
It's disputed.
No, I'm saying that is not commonly disputed. Like, you might have some super like conservative scholars But
It's
like
not super conservative, dude. There's a large minority of scholars that dispute
large
that.
minority,
Yes, it's a minority. I'm not saying it's a majority.
a really
Well,
big
what's
small.
funny?
I'm
I'm not
just
suggesting. I'm not suggesting it's a majority. I'm not suggesting that.
Of
But
course
you
it's
have to
not.
understand the majority is largely a lot of secular authors too, right?
Now,
That's
I
why.
would
But
not. I don't know if that's the majority.
religious scholars would also agree. Dr. Raymond Brown, for example, would agree that Second Peter was like 2nd century, not by Peter.
Yeah, I'm not saying all religious scholars agree with me either. What I'm saying though, there is this fairly sizable minority. Anyway, my point is, look.
Thank you for
My
the
point
super
is this.
chat,
Look,
Milena.
this is what I'm saying to you. This is what I'm saying to you. Like, I give you guys some evidences of why you should believe the resurrection, and you're coming with these like inferences from these possibilities. It's possible they thought that it was the end times, and then if we can infer from that
It's
if
not
they thought it was the end
possible.
times, maybe they thought that Jesus was risen.
Impossible. It just
The
is the fact
text-
that they thought they lived in the end times.
No,
Yeah, the
no,
text
it's
over and
possible.
over. It is the last hour.
If we want to discuss that, I talked about last days not meaning tomorrow.
Toronto,
The last day doesn't mean-
I have a principle when weighing these things. When you hear hoofbeats in the distance, think horses, not unicorns. My belief is just more parsimonious.
No, it isn't, because you're ignoring the fact that, like, as I was saying to you, Peter says that a day is 1,000 years. It's not just from Peter. It's also in the Bible. That notion that the last days.
That's just the author of Second Peter coping with the fact that Jesus had not
No.
yet returned, even though it was the 2nd century.
Again, you're just saying that. The fact is,
I'm not just saying that. I'm just reporting on the scholarly consensus.
Excuse me. Hold on. This notion that the day to the Lord is 1,000 years is in Deuteronomy. It's in the Bible. That's a concept in the Bible already.
Where in Deuteronomy?
In Deuteronomy, isn't it? I can't remember now exactly.
The author of Second Peter is quoting the Psalms, although quoting it incorrectly, where it says that
Psalms?
1,000 years is like yesterday to you. And again, these are the Psalms, which are what genre?
Yeah. So what? That's Peter's also
Poetry.
using that idea, but poetry doesn't
poetry.
mean that that's not a theological truth.
That's
My
just
point
the
is-
author.
my point is
That's,
that-
that's
my
just the
point
psalmist
is that-
saying that time,
Dude,
that because of God's
my point is that-
that's just the psalmist saying that
Excuse
because
me,
of God,
excuse me.
because of how God is so ancient, that
Dude,
our human scale of time doesn't
my
mean the same
point
thing to him.
is-
But if Jesus says to a
Wow,
human
dude.
audience that these things will happen soon, unless speaking to a human audience saying that something will happen soon, if soon doesn't mean soon, then I think God would be smart enough to not use the word soon.
Look, this is a theological truth that's in the Psalms. It's poetic, but it's a theological fact. For 1,000 years in thy sight, are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. When it is past, 1,000 years is but a day to the Lord. So when
That's
they
not-
say the last days, when they say the last days, it doesn't refer to necessarily this week. And also, as I was saying to you before, you talked about Jesus supposedly saying he's going to come in this generation. He's coming in the clouds. Coming in the clouds is referring to him coming to earth. It's coming in the clouds, like in Daniel chapter 9, when he comes to the
with the
Ancient of
glory.
Days.
He says that he will
Or Daniel
come with
7,
the glory.
sorry.
He says that before this generation passes, the Son of Man will come in his glory with his angels to bring forth judgment.
Yeah.
What is that a reference to?
That's a reference to a dual prophecy.
What? Dual prophecy is the greatest Christian.
What is
The great-
happening?
Dual prophecy is a thing in the Bible, man.
It's not. Well, it's not. I mean, it's a way for Christians to cope with the fact that the Bible doesn't say what it really says. You know, dual prophecy is a way of getting around the fact that the Hebrew Bible doesn't prophesy Jesus. But for the Son of Man,
dual prophecy is clearly a thing in the Bible. Clearly,
it's I know it's a thing in Christian theology to cope.
It's a
with
thing in the Old
problems of
Testament.
Bible.
Jews knew about it.
Matthew, no. Matthew chapter 16, verse 27. For the Son of Man is, again, stop making claims about what Jewish people know. For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father,
Jewish people do
and
talk
they will
about-
and they will repay everyone for what has been done. What is that a reference to?
The end times. But that's what I'm saying. There's a dual prophecy happening.
No, it's not. Jesus is just saying that he is going to return and repay judgment against all of the
No, you're just ignoring my argument. You're just like denying it based on nothing.
No, you need to
Based on
give
no
me a
reason.
good. You need to give me a good reason to believe that there's dual prophecy. Here.
I did. There's dual prophecy in the Bible, even in the OT.
I
The
don't.
Jews knew about it.
Give me a good reason to think that dual prophecy is a valid mechanism for reading the Bible.
Yeah, because for example, the day of the Lord concepts appears in the Bible all the time. But even Jews understood that it's also referring to this end times concept. And even Second Temple Jews would often talk about how like their idea of receiving the land back and stuff was really an end times concept, right? So the concept
where's
of
the dual
prophecy
where's the dual nature though? All I'm getting from that is that in the Hebrew Bible, it talks about the last days where the Jewish people will be gathered in, but there's nothing dual about that.
No, because they'll say the day of the Lord, and it's referring to this historical thing, but it's also referring to this end times thing at the same time. That's what I'm talking.
No, it's simply referring to the judgment of God in the future. That's it.
No. They often use the day of the Lord to refer to judgments in their time period. For example, like in I'm trying to think of a time. Maybe, or even look at Isaiah 61, where it talks about how
how the prophet, the author of the Trito Isaiah, brings about like freedom to those who are in captivity. That's just about that time period.
No, it's about Jesus as well, and also the thing is Jesus also closes the book.
It's not about Jesus. That's just what the author of the Gospel of Luke. Jesus. That's just the author, the claim of the author of the Gospel of Luke. Whenever I see first person pronouns in use, that means that it is the author referring to themselves.
No, not necessarily. Like look at Isaiah 49. That's not the author referring to himself. What a joke.
It is. It is.
Isaiah 49. Isaiah 49:6 is the author referring to himself. What an absolute joke.
Well, here,
Isaiah 49.
Isaiah 49. Isaiah
what
49.
An absolute joke.
Listen to me, O coastlands. Pay attention, you peoples from far away. The Lord called me before I was born. This is the prophet talking. Yeah. While I was in my mother's womb, he named me. He made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand, he hid me. He made me a polished arrow. In the quiver, he hid me away. He said to me, "You are my servant Israel, in whom I will be glorified." But why is he
calling the prophet Israel? Why is he calling the prophet Israel? Why?
The prophet's Jewish? No,
he's not Israel though. What are you talking about, dude?
Is the prophet not a member? Is the prophet? Yes. That's the job.
No, he's not.
Toronto. That's the job of here. You can just say "nuh-uh" all you want. I'm going to mute you and go to give an answer. You can just say "nuh-uh" all you want. But the job of the Jewish people, and maybe you would know this if you did more Bible study, Exodus chapter 19, verse 6, the job of the Jewish people is to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Why are they called the kingdom of priests? What is the job of a priest, Toronto?
The prophet is not doing that job. The prophet
answer my question. Answer my question. When it says in Exodus chapter 19, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire in this. I'm not going to let you go. When it says in the book of Exodus that the Jewish people are a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, what does that mean? What is the job of a priest?
Yeah, they're supposed to go out and tell everyone. That's the point is though, they didn't do that job. That's why he's picking.
Are you making a claim that?
Hold on a sec. Can I please answer the question? Dude,
are you making
you refuse to let me?
Are you making the claim that unequivocally that the Jewish people all failed that mission, that there were no righteous Jews in Israel like the prophet who were doing God's work? Is that the claim?
No, I never made that claim. No, I never made a claim at all. But as a people group, they failed. That's why he's going to the Messiah. That's why Isaiah 49. That's why he goes to the Messiah.
It's not about the Messiah. It's about the prophet.
No, it's about the servant. It's about the servant. Okay, the servant.
The servant is Israel.
Oh, the servant is not the Messiah. The servant is not Israel.
I agree. The servant is not the Messiah.
The servant is not. No, I didn't say that. The servant is not Israel, because you can see in 49:6 that he's being told to restore Israel. The servant
and Toronto. Surely reading the New Testament, like Romans chapter 9, you're familiar with the concept of the righteous remnant, no?
Yeah.
Okay, like for example, Elijah. Elijah's a member of the righteous remnant. Elijah was afraid that he was alone in this,
Yeah,
but God
dude, that's
assured.
not referring to a righteous remnant,
Toronto,
dude.
yeah.
We later read
Here, let's break down the words. What is a remnant, Toronto? What is a remnant?
ridiculous, dude. This is ridiculous.
What is a remnant?
We
What is a
read about the servant later. He's gonna
Here, maybe I need to meet you again so you can hear the question this time. What is a remnant? What does that word mean?
A remnant is a group of people who continue to believe even though the rest of the nation is turned against God. And this is not
Okay,
talking about that.
so
this is not talking about that. It's talking about one person.
Well, no,
It
you just
is.
think that.
And also
So, question, Toronto. During the Babylonian exile, was there a righteous remnant of Jews that continued to be faithful to God in the exile? Yes or no?
Yes, of course. That's not the point. That's not what this is about.
Was the prophet a member of what? Was the prophet a member? Was the prophet a member of that righteous
remnant?
This is
ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Out of context.
Was the prophet a member of that righteous remnant? Yes or no?
Yeah, the prophet was. That doesn't mean.
Okay.
We read about the servant later in 52 and 53.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
The servant is going to appear in the future. He's going to grow up.
No, not appear in the future. That's not what it says. We're going to get to that in a second, though. So the prophet in Isaiah chapter 49, would it be the job of the prophet who's a member of the righteous remnant to bring back the lost of Jacob, the unrighteous? Is that the job of the prophet?
The servant is there to. The prophet is there to help the remnants, and he's just talking to them. His job is not to bring back anyone. His job.
Yes, that's the whole.
Hold on. I'm gonna.
Toronto, that's the whole job of prophets. The whole purpose of a prophet is to proclaim to the people who are walking away from God that you have sinned. You need to return to God and repent of your sin. Is that not correct?
Okay. Why does Isaiah 6 say that he should go and close their ears, shut their eyes, and so they will not hear him? He's going to harden their hearts.
Now we're talking about proto Isaiah.
Now we're talking about something else. No, that's God's direct insertions to the prophet against what you're saying.
To a different prophet.
Absolutely against what you're saying. No,
to a different prophet.
Again, you're just making up. You're inserting your theories
Toronto.
about the book. You're just asserting your theories if they're true.
It's not just a mere theory, Toronto. You're crashing out real hard right now. No, it is an established fact that the author of Deutero Isaiah is a different author from the author of Proto Isaiah. Toronto, the prophet Isaiah.
Derek, hold on a sec. This person's trying to make the claim that the prophets all had to. Their whole job was to bring the people back into God's like, I don't know, his role, right? But I mean, in Isaiah chapter 6, it says that no, God is commanding him to harden their hearts, stop their ears, close their eyes, because they will not listen to him. So he's not there to do that. And also,
until what? Until what? Until how? No. Until what?
Bad exegesis.
Yeah, I know. Bad exegesis on your part. The eyes of the people are closed and their ears are stopped. Until what point? Did you read the rest of Isaiah 6?
Oh, sorry. He's muted. Real quick, Alan, thank you for the super chat. Dalton, should it be servant or slave?
So the cities be wasted without inhabitants.
Eved it's the slave of Yahweh. So yeah. Isaiah chapter 6 talks about how make the mind of the people dull and stop their ears until what? Because it tells you a cutoff.
The cities be wasted without inhabitant, the houses without man, the land utterly desolate. My point is just that.
When did that happen?
To bring the people back.
When did that happen? When did that happen?
It happens when it happens. But the point is, though, he's not there to.
What an answer!
The point
what
is,
an answer!
The point is,
no, I'm not going to let you get off. I know you.
So can I jump in here, Dalton, just to make this point? Because you might hate me, some of you. I have a soft spot for Toronto. Okay, as much as I think he does a lot of bullshitting. Okay, part of TBS. I do enjoy having these exchanges, but I don't think Toronto's understanding what Dalton's trying to do is anchor these texts in their historical setting. This should not be that hard for you to wrap your mind around, Toronto, because you literally said when we brought up Matthew or the other text about him coming in judgment, and you went dual fulfillment. You should be easily accepting everything Dalton is saying about the prophet, its historical context back in the Old Testament, and then just going, but listen, there's a deeper secondary prophecy in the historical original context. You literally should have just pulled that card out. You never did. You're fighting something you shouldn't even be fighting, because you could have just pulled out the dual fulfillment card 5 minutes ago and not been muted once and just accepted the very thing, because what Dalton is saying is historically accurate with these texts. The problem is Dalton does not follow you to the New Testament, meaning we both will agree with you that the New Testament authors are trying to pull from those texts, but we do not believe they're real fulfillments of that material. And so I hope that that makes better sense and gives you something to work on, Toronto.
No, well, what he was saying that I was saying the dual fulfillment thing about 61, and he was trying to argue against it, right? But now with this one, what he's saying is something else.
He's saying that he's
that
anchoring it back. He's anchoring it back here. Okay. You're trying to make it only one fulfillment, and you're trying to make it Jesus.
No. Well, no. Well, let me just make this clear for you. 61 is a dual fulfillment. I agree. That's my view. He thinks that's incorrect. What he's saying about this other scripture now that we're talking about now, Isaiah 49, right?
Right.
He's suggesting that servant has no other fulfillment at any other time, right? And that in that moment, it was about the people of Israel, right? But I'm saying to you that there's no dual fulfillment with that prophecy. That is strictly about the Messiah.
How do you know that?
Because there's no elements of dual fulfillment there. You know, there's no element. There's no reason why I should think.
I would say there's no element of dual fulfillment in Isaiah 61 either.
Yeah, that's different though. That's different. Where you're suggesting that Luke is just completely wrong about it. You know, you're suggesting that there's no reason to believe that. Like,
yeah, he's doing what you're doing. He's just taking the old Hebrew Bible out of context. You've given. There's nothing in the text of Isaiah. There's nothing in the text of Isaiah 61 that would even signal to me that this is. There's supposed to be a dual fulfillment. I'm just looking at it for what it is in its original linguistic and historical context.
No, there is reason to believe that there's a dual fulfillment there, because there's lots of. For example, there's a thing with Cyrus in 45, right? Cyrus is kind of represented in 61 as well. It's like this idea of the judgment coming in their time.
There's no Cyrus
that is
references
sort of
in Isaiah 61.
No, I know, but that idea of the idea of like the judgment coming at that moment, that he's going to bring the judgment. That's why there is this dual fulfillment. This is the thing. This is like complex. Like for me to just come in here and just start ripping on this is difficult, right? But the dual fulfillment argument from Isaiah is quite strong, and it does involve the Cyrus elements. Cyrus being this
it's
shepherd,
not strong.
the Messiah.
The only reason
whatever. You don't even know. Listen, dude.
Toronto,
can I just finish my point? Can I finish one point? Wow.
If you came to this text without the starting of the New Testament, you would not think that there was any dual fulfillment nature in these works.
No, again, you're not understanding the deeper nature of these texts. Now, the New Testament allows us to see them properly, but there is clearly this element there of dual fulfillment. For example, Cyrus is called the Messiah, and he's a shepherd, and he's a this, he's a that. He's gonna save the people. He's going to bring judgment against the enemies, right? And then we see this again in 61, the judgment against the enemies, freeing the people. And so the idea that this is really about the Messiah, the ultimate Messiah, is present in the text. And there's other elements there as well.
No, why should I think there's anything in the text beyond what the text says? Without like starting with,
I just told you.
No, all you've described.
And also, by the way, your argument of 49 is ridiculous.
No, it's not ridiculous. By the way, you
actually ignored the whole.
Actually, you
ignored the meaning of the
actually you conceded every single point that I brought up. You did.
you ignore the meaning of the pronouns. The pronoun is
No,
the
you're
singular
ignoring. No, you're
pronoun.
ignoring that. No, wait, no,
not.
Toronto.
You're trying to
You
say-
are. Toronto.
You're trying to say
What?
when
Toronto.
he says
No, Toronto. Toronto.
when he says
Yeah.
I am Israel.
What is a first person pronoun refer to?
It refers to a person. The person. Yes. The thing is though, it's referring to Israel, and it's referring to also he's gonna be a light to the Gentiles.
Prophet, is the
prophet's
prophet a member of
light to the
Israel?
Gentiles. When was Isaiah
Yes, he
commanded
is.
to go to the
Yes,
Gentiles?
he is.
When was he commanded to go
Exodus
to
19. Exodus 19.
That's not true. It's not true. It's not true.
Okay.
That's
Is
like
it true or
not,
false?
he is not. He is not commanded to go to the
Toronto.
Gentiles.
True or
Just
false?
making up stuff. You're just literally just
Are
making
the
up.
Toronto? I know you.
to bring.
I'm going to ask you, no matter what you do, I'm going to ask you this question: true or false? The job of the Jewish people, which the author of Isaiah 49 is a member of, is to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Yes or no? True or false?
Yeah, that's true, but that's not doesn't mean that the prophet was commanded to do that. He never was.
Does God tell us in the Torah that the Jewish people keeping these commandments, that the people will see it and go, what a wise people these are?
Yeah, but again, that's not what's happening in Isaiah. You're trying to this
How
is
do you know?
ridiculous exegesis. No, because you're the one
know?
trying to say that this is some kind of proper exegesis when you're really just reaching for this other.
I'm
text.
not reaching. I'm just reading what the text plainly said.
It doesn't. It does not plainly say that.
It does not plainly say that.
Derek,
what the text plainly here? You can ask Derek a question.
Yeah, Derek, you're gonna do a video on Isaiah 49 or about the suffering servant and Isaiah 53.
Isaiah 53 specifically, but I can address Isaiah 49. But again,
this is all what this is about.
This is, I know, and that's why I'm not really showing too many of my cards here. But at the end of the day, I do agree with Dalton on this, and I understand why later Christians look back and go, "Oh, let me find things in the scriptures." The same way he was bringing up earlier about the rising, you find this in the Hebrew scriptures, right, or the Septuagint, because they're using the Greek Septuagint. To come up with ideas for Jesus' resurrection. They're searching the scriptures and believing they're finding these messages in scriptures. So I think it's anachronistic, and it isn't actually taking into the account that you're looking at a text that is written back here, expecting a Messiah back here. The last caller, did you watch the guy the same day you called in, the guy that was at Speaker's Corner that was bringing up Isaiah 48? Do you remember that call? I did a little clip of it. I did one with you and I did one with him.
Okay.
Do you remember? I know you saw the one I did on you. You don't remember that guy?
Yeah. I don't remember that. No.
Okay. Well, I asked him, who is the one whom the Lord loved? And like, he could never answer it. And he was trying to gaslight us and do all sorts of BS. And then finally, like, I don't know what happened. What happened, Dalton? Did he hang up or did we have to like boot him? I can't remember. Do you remember?
I think he ran.
He ran or something, but all he had to do was like a quick search and find out this talking about Cyrus the Great, and a few critical scholarly commentaries would help you understand the original context again, and then you could just pull your double fulfillment out if you really wanted to. If you said, "Hey, I need to keep this," a light just turned on my laptop so you could see me better. But again, you could just.
I don't know. I don't want, because I don't like to pull things out, bro. I'm trying to do a responsible exegesis here, you know.
So,
but I think what you're doing, no, that's not what you're doing. It's not what you're doing. Jumping to Exodus 19.
That is why. No, it's not ludicrous. That's ludicrous. Because you've already conceded that the job of the Jewish people is to be a kingdom of priests.
That's obviously not what he's talking about there. He's talking about something else. He's talking about one
is the prophet a member of the Jewish people? Yes or no?
Yeah, again, dude, I already told you how ridiculous this is. Stop asking me.
I know you think it's
no,
ridiculous.
It's anyone who understands exegesis would know this.
You just saying it's ridiculous is not an argument. You just saying it's ridiculous is not an argument.
Who else agrees with you?
The consensus of scholars
agree with you on
this. The consensus of scholarship would agree with me that Isaiah 49 is not about Jesus.
They don't say it's about the prophet. They do not. They say it's about the nation or something. To try to fit that in.
Fun fact: the prophet is a member of the. The prophet is a member of the nation of Israel, specifically.
But when they call him Israel, they call him the servant Israel. And also, the servant is in the future.
No, it's
Isaiah
not.
52, 53.
No, look at the
Yeah.
tenses. What does
Shall,
mecholal?
shall.
What does mecholal mean? Mecholal in Hebrew.
I don't know. What does it mean?
Does it mean he shall be wounded or he was wounded?
Let me see. Let me see this one. We shall grow up. Well, the thing is, like, sometimes the prophecies have this kind of play with the tenses, right? But they do see he shall grow up. He shall grow up before him as a tender
Whoa,
plant.
what translation are you looking at right now? King James? That
King
might be the
James.
problem. Yeah, for he grew up. He grew up like a young plant.
Oh yeah.
The
Well,
Hebrew-
still, that's just because
Vaya'al
no.
ki yonech lapanav. He grew
No.
up.
That's
It
just
already
no.
happened.
That's also a known fact in Hebrew prophecy that they do that. They play with
It's
the
not.
tense.
It's not a known fact. That's an
It is
apologetic
100% a known fact.
No, you can
100% a known fact.
can
So
you prove
who
to
is
me?
who's Isaiah 53 about? Who's it about?
It's the same. It's the righteous remnant of Israel. Same person, same group.
Why would the righteous remnant? It's talking about a single person. A single
Well,
person.
Actually-
Israel, how many times have the prophets spoke of Israel as an individual? The collective group of Israel is spoken as an individual. He marries her. She is his bride as an individual often, sometimes is identified as a male individually. But there are times where go read Hosea. I mean, literally.
So when did this? So okay. So you're saying this happened in the past? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yes.
the suffering of the
So
servant.
when did this
The
occur?
suffering.
When did this
The
occur?
stuff
When were they
in the
risen?
Babylonian in the rising. Actually, if you read Ezekiel 37, tells you exactly what that's about. The rising is referring to the corporal raising of the nation. They were in exile in the land of the dead.
Oh my
And then
God.
that's why does Ezekiel not say that? Does Ezekiel not make that? What's the valley? Have you heard of the valley of dry bones?
Yeah, of course, man.
What was
But
the valley
I
of
don't
dry
think-
bones all about?
I think it's about the anti-resurrection. But yes, I do believe. Yes, I think you're right that there is a dual prophecy there again. But
So
even
What
then,
does the text
even they
actually
knew.
say?
Hold on. It says that they're going to rise from that. They're going to the bones. That the bones will be having flesh again. They'll rise, right? But
Yeah, that's
I don't know.
in the office.
Your
And then
exegesis here. Look, this is
Yahweh,
the thing.
and then Yahweh explicitly tells Ezekiel that the bones are the nation of Israel who are rising from their exile.
Yeah, but no, it doesn't say rising from their exile. What does it say? It doesn't. Where does it say that?
Yeah, let me take a look.
Rising from their exile. Where does it say that?
They're
Let's
dead
see.
people. The
Yeah,
idea
they're
is
dead. They're literally dead, and they rise from the dead. What does it
Yeah,
say about their
that's-
exile? Anyway. Look.
so.
Look,
And one more
this-
comment
Derek,
about Isaiah
Derek.
53, though, that I think is worth noting is that there are some scholars who don't take it as the remnant, okay, and they understand it as a historical individual prophet from the past. Now,
Okay, but there are
mind you, it
scholars
is
who
not
don't
the majority.
understand.
That is not the majority. That is a minority scholarly take, but they understand it as someone like Isaiah, someone like one of the kings. It's one of the ancient prophets from the past, and they're not looking to Jesus to explain that answer. Is the point that I'm trying to make here? I know
Yeah,
that
because
later
they're not-
Christians, huh?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying. I know that later Christians do identify Jesus with this, but I'm making the point that historically, in the original context, when you go to the scholars who are experts in that text, they will tell you, like, hey, there is a dispute here, but it is the majority that thinks this is the righteous remnant. But there are some that think that it's this individual or that individual. And these are historical individual back there, not a future individual. So either way you slice it, you still have to deal with the original intent, original context that seems to be implying something back there. And then again, if you're a Christian and you need, to say, hey, no, this is still Jesus too, then dual fulfillment. You pull your dual fulfillment card out, even though we're not convinced of that idea. I mean, you could still do that if you absolutely must, but you understand where we're trying to. If I was going to open a different book, we're stuck on Isaiah all of a sudden for the past 45 minutes. But like if we went to open up Hosea and you went, nah, bro, that's not talking about the people of Israel. That's not the people of Israel back here. It's talking about Paul, because Paul quotes Hosea in his letters to the Romans when he talks about my people Israel. You're not going to be my people. He's going to regather them. And then at the end of Romans 11, he says, all Israel shall be saved. No, Hosea is actually prophesying Paul's day. And I said,
Well,
but what about back here with Hosea and Israel? And you go, it's talking about Paul and his mission to the Gentiles.
No.
I'm just making
Here's
a
the
point, an analogy.
I get your point. I get your point. But let me just say this: like, we do have a more nuanced reading than that, right? We understand that at the time they would have thought it was literally Israel, but by the Second Temple Judaism, they had already started, or some of them had already started to think of it as, wait a minute, this must be some kind of end times eschatological reunification of like God's people or something like that. That's what they started to already understand it that way. That's why when the Christian understanding of Hosea comes about with Paul's writing and other New Testament writings, it's not something out of the blue. It's something that had already been in Jewish culture at the time.
But me and Dalton would still disagree with it either way, is all we're saying, because we do know we agree with you that Jews were doing this already. They were doing Pesher, they were Midrash. There was all sorts of interesting ways they were looking to their scriptures, and even this with the teacher of righteousness in the Qumran community. They were looking at him and using Isaiah 53 and other things like that. So we're not in disagreement with you on these elements, but we're trying to anchor your feet to the original context, to first just accept what's in front of your eyes and understand why the original context is saying what it's saying back here. If you can't get with the collective idea, okay, you disagree with Dalton, go find the historical critical scholars who identify an individual back there. Then use the dual fulfillment card to go to Jesus like later Jews do. We're trying to anchor you into the historical original context, though. That's why we're pressing you on this.
That's why I don't think that's fair. But the thing is you're ignoring the possibility of prophecy here, right?
You said you don't think that's fair?
I don't think it's good to try to come up with some kind of dual fulfillment thing with 49.
Okay, then let me ask you this. Let's say you were convinced, hypothetically, you were convinced that Dalton was right. You found out, you know what? Actually, I do think there's a righteous remnant in Daniel. You see it. There's a righteous remnant that's preserved. You see it in Isaiah. You see it in all these places. And let's just say in Isaiah 49, you go, you know what? Damn it, Dalton, you got a point. All right. Would you then feel like you needed to look for Jesus? I mean, do you feel like if you found out that it was talking about the righteous remnant, what would you then believe? Let's say Dalton was right, hypothetically. Let's say he's right. Would you go, damn, okay, Dalton's right?
Yeah, well,
need
then
to put Jesus in the picture on that.
Yeah, no, then I would think it's some kind of dual prophecy, I guess. But that's just like, it's
why
a
would
weird
you do
question
that?
to ask me.
Well, I know, but that's why I'm saying, why would you think it's a dual?
Because the New Testament
okay
tells us this.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
Isaiah 53, you know
I
what I mean?
I don't believe it, but I understand why you're doing that, and that's what I'm wanting to show. That's all I'm wanting to do. Is have
but what I'm trying to say is there's evidence even in the text, right? That I was trying to point out that Isaiah 49:3 talks about like the servant is Israel, an individual representing Israel. But then later he's said to be the one who has to save Israel or has to restore them. So it's like you can see this one individual is being put into these two roles, right? So that's why I don't think it's the nation. Now he was saying that it's the prophet. I know, I get it. But why I don't think it's the prophet is because the Isaiah 52 and 53 shows us that there's this innocent person suffering for others. Why is Isaiah innocent?
Isaiah 53 refers to the suffering servant as a they in the plural at one point in the text.
At one point, not at all points. Most points he's an individual. And also it's like,
well, wait a minute.
He's innocent. Yeah. And they are not.
So
right?
so is the righteous remnant. The righteous remnant are innocent.
Yeah.
No, they're not. They're not innocent.
Yes, they are.
Why would I think that?
They haven't bent the knee to, they're like, it's like the righteous remnant in Elijah's day. Were they guilty of idol worship?
Yeah, but they're still not innocent. They still have transgressions. It's a known fact, right?
That doesn't matter to a Jewish audience. It doesn't matter if you've committed some sins in the past. As long as you're actively pursuing Yahweh, then you're considered righteous from the eyes of the Hebrew Bible.
No. Not in that perfect way like this, like the servant.
That's not a requirement from the Hebrew Bible.
Hey, was Job?
I think it is.
Was Job, like innocent, or was he guilty according to you?
He's guilty, man. He's guilty.
Why
That's
does
why-
the
that's why
Bible call him
God-
blameless and upright? It does not
Because
say he's
that's
guilty
just-
at all. He's completely
that's-
innocent.
No, that's not true. And that's why God kind
Job,
of reprimands
Job 1,
him.
can you pull up Job 1:1?
I know. I've seen. Yes,
yeah,
of course.
Job
It says he's perfect and righteous. Same with
Yeah.
Zechariah.
Yeah,
Zechariah
that
is said to
sounds
be
like Christian theology of like,
no, dude.
original
bro.
sin stuff you're putting into
No, it's not. It's not even, dude. Like,
So
that's why
could the righteous remnant not be considered blameless and upright?
yeah, but those people are still not they're not like it's just like look, Job is later considered to be he's like upbraided by God severely, right? In chapters 38, 39. And then if you look at other examples of people like Zechariah and Elizabeth, John's parents, they were also referred to as righteous and walking in the ways of the Lord, blameless.
Why do you
okay?
think the Catholics
But-
literally identify Mary as blameless and sinless? Catholics literally
Well-
have an entire tradition built on this idea that she had no sin. That's why she was able to birth the Messiah or Christ.
Yeah, but that's not in the Bible, though. That's
I
not in the Bible. That's their
understand.
tradition.
She was upright, though, but the tradition develops this idea. The reason that development even took place is this idea that Dalton's talking about.
What idea is he's talking about some idea from ancient Jewish thought, not Christian theology. He's talking
But-
about some idea.
Well, we are talking about the Hebrew Bible right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're suggesting that there were people in the Hebrew Bible who were considered sinless, like
Yes.
the servant.
Yes.
Isaiah
They were
53.
blameless.
I'm saying,
Blameless.
Yeah.
I'm saying that they really weren't, because as I was saying to you, Job was reprimanded
So
heavily.
you
by
disagree
God.
with the scriptures?
No, I'm just saying it refers to him as blameless because he follows the path of the Lord as much as he can, but he's not truly innocent without sin. like
What's
the
he guilty
servant
of?
did. He's back talking God in the book and stuff, you know. That's why God reprimands him so hard in chapter 38 and 39, right? He does get reprimanded pretty hard. And so does Zacharias. Zacharias
Here,
is struck dumb.
I'm gonna read you a passage from Isaiah 53. I'm gonna read you a passage from Zephaniah after that. I want you to notice the similarity in the language. Isaiah 53 verse 9. They made his grave with the wicked and his tomb with the rich, although he had done no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth. Take note of that phrase. He had done no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth. Now, when I go to Zephaniah chapter 3, you want to know what it says about the righteous remnant? It says, they shall seek refuge in the name of the Lord, the remnant of Israel. They shall do no wrong and utter no lies, nor shall a deceitful tongue be found in their mouths. The same exact language is being used to refer to the righteous remnant in Isaiah and Zephaniah 3:13. It's the same thing.
Context.
Done no violence and no deceit in their mouth.
It's totally different context. Like they're talking about different issues. Like you're just
The
mixing
context.
Stuff. This is
the
terrible
context.
exegesis again.
The context. You
Terrible
can keep
exegesis.
saying Toronto. You can just keep saying it's terrible exegesis because you disagree with it, but that's not an argument. The fact of the matter is the context. The context. The context of Isaiah 53.
From one
The
context to
context.
another.
The context of Isaiah 53 is repeatedly, time after time after time after time, the servant is repeatedly referred to as Israel, and even Isaiah 53 refers to the servant in the plural, a singular person.
One time again.
Yeah, that one time.
Not in the whole text.
Can in Hebrew?
And also you're ignoring what I said about Isaiah 49.
Toronto. In the Hebrew language, can a singular person be referred to as a they?
Sometimes, yeah, I'm sure.
Show me one example in the scriptures where a singular individual can be referred to as a they. That's not how Hebrew grammar
look,
works.
dude. I don't know what you're trying to do.
Well, he's trying to
clearly
grammatically.
he's referred to as a singular person, right? Numerous times,
and
Well,
as a plural.
right?
You want to know what he's
So
trying
then,
to do? He's
why?
trying to
Which
get
one
you to
takes
see.
precedence? So sorry, Derek. Sorry, what did
He's
you say?
trying to get you to see that this righteous remnant is being discussed. The context. That's what he's trying to get you to see.
In Isaiah 53.
In the
No,
passages
no,
you
he's
just
trying- no,
quoted,
first you're saying-
specific.
No, he doesn't know what he's saying.
Zephaniah-
Whoa! I don't know what I'm
he's saying-
saying. Here,
yes,
Toronto.
what time he's saying-
Toronto.
What time he's saying the
What is-
righteous remnant,
what
and
is-
another time he's saying it's the
Toronto.
prophet.
I
Is
don't
the
know what
servant
I'm
the
saying.
prophet?
Toronto.
Is the
Toronto.
servant the
do you-
prophet, or is it the
Toronto.
servant the
Toronto.
righteous remnant?
Shut up. you don't get to come up here and say I don't know what I'm talking about. Toronto, do you speak Hebrew by any chance?
I don't speak. Oh, do you speak it? Speak it? What are you
I
talking
speak
about?
I speak Hebrew. Mi
I
pesha
studied
ami
Hebrew.
nagat la mo.
Oh yeah, well, wonderful,
Don't-
wonderful. That's
don't-
wonderful, dude. That has
Don't
nothing to
come
do with
up.
it. You
Don't
tried to
come up
say
here. Don't come up here and say you don't know what you're talking about when you don't speak Hebrew.
I didn't say
you demonstrated
you
in
don't
this
know what you're talking about. What?
You did say that, and you demonstrated time after time after time in this conversation. You don't know jack shit about Judaism or the Jewish people, and quite
No, I
frankly,
never
about what the
demonstrated anything
Hebrew
like
even
that.
says.
You're overclaiming all the time. I'm just trying to say because I don't agree with your overclaims that I
You've
don't
given
know
my
anything.
you've given
By the
me
way,
and
by
my
the way, by
audience
the way,
no.
I never
You've
said
given-
you don't know.
you-
Hold on a second.
You've given neither me nor my audience any reason to think that I've overclaimed anything. You've just said nuh-uh this entire conversation.
You claim that the Talmud is some window into first century thought. That's ludicrous.
Then just claim it.
You claim
Proved it.
You also claimed. No, you
Then
didn't
just
prove. You
claim
didn't
it.
prove anything
Proved
of
it.
the kind.
I did prove
You didn't
Toronto.
prove
I know.
anything of the
I know.
kind.
I sure. Here, I'll refer. I didn't prove it to Toronto
You refer
because
to a second century.
I didn't prove it to Toronto because Toronto is too stubborn and indoctrinated to take in any new information.
Just
But I think
amuse
I've
me.
sufficiently.
Amuse me.
I think I've sufficiently
Ridiculous.
proved it to the audience.
You didn't prove anything of the kind. What you did
I know
was
you think that.
your audience of God haters would agree with you. Yes. What you did was
we
you
go.
referred to a second century text
God haters.
and another
Do you
text that
think
was.
do you think I'm a God hater?
I don't know, Derek, but you're certainly a rabid.
Well, let me ask.
atheist or
Let me.
something along the lines
I
of it.
don't believe there's a God personally, but
Okay.
I don't. I'm not a. My whole family believes there's a God.
You're
You think I honestly just hate God?
no, well, you're certainly like you have a.
If I don't
incentive.
think he exists,
You have
like
an
why would I
incentive.
hate?
You have an incentive, Derek. I think you'll agree.
Everyone
to
has
push
an
a certain
incentive.
narrative here.
My narrative is
so?
trying to figure out what the truth is and make the most sense of it.
Yeah, so
from
everyone
the
says
Bible.
that, Derek. Everyone says that.
Right.
Everyone
But
says that.
I don't
What
know
I'm saying is-
why make the comment though that just God haters, like we don't think God
No,
exists.
I
even
wasn't
then,
calling you
though-
that. I was seeing him in
Yeah,
his
your audience is.
yeah.
Well, I'm part of Dalton's audience as well. Even though we're friends and we have YouTube
Well,
channels and we collab, I'm part
okay.
of his audience too. I feel a bit like it's like saying you're a hater of and I say something that you don't believe exists. You're like, come on, don't straw man me. Like there might be some people. Don't get me wrong. I can look at depictions in the Hebrew Bible and see that God and go, F that God. I am not okay. I hate that image of God. I think that image of God is evil and wicked, and I think that's a terrible God if people believe it. I don't think it exists, but yeah, I could hate depictions of a God that is described in literature, especially if it's weaponized in the real world against people, and it is. But I don't hate God. Like if there was a God, I'd want to freaking know. I'm going to be honest. So I would just ask that you retract that last statement or be more nuanced about what statement you're making because things are getting emotional. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Fair enough. I'll retract that. What I'm getting at though is the idea that Dalton thinks that his audience is convinced, therefore he proved it, is not true. Okay, he didn't prove it. He's referring to a second century. Excuse me. He's referring to a second century text. Excuse me.
Is not a valid.
I like to make my point. I like to make my point before you interrupt me. He always interrupts me because he can't let me make my point because then he would show that he's wrong. He's referring to a second century text and a 6th century text to claim that they have some direct window into first century thought.
Toronto, what was my? I want you to steel man my argument for why I think that the Talmud gives us
because you were saying that they're quotes from Shemaiah and Hillel, therefore they're first century quotes, therefore this is a vision into first century thought. Again, we don't know that they quoted them accurately. We don't know anything about it.
We don't know the Gospels quoted. We don't know the Gospels.
Again, that's irrelevant to this argument.
It's not irrelevant.
Your argument was.
It's not irrelevant.
Your argument. Excuse me. Your argument was
you don't hold equal weights and measures. And quite honestly, I'm washing my hands of you at this point. I'm tired of it.
Look, Fern Love Bond, thank you for the super chat. Says, what if each interruption is a reduction to TBS's volume by 10%? When he hits mute, he waits on mute until whoever was talking is done. Mute TBS. And then there's another super chat. Robin Webster said, I hate God and Easter Bunny equally.
Yeah, I hate God as much as I hate Voldemort.
Look, I was making a point about how 2nd century and 6th century texts to not give you a window into the first century thought. And this person brings up the Gospels, how we don't believe the Gospel writers. It's irrelevant to my argument against your claim. Your claim was that these sixth century and second century books give us a window into first century thought because the quotes are accurate.
When does the
Obviously, we don't know the quotes are accurate.
you've already
Hold on.
you've already
Hold on a
no,
sec.
you've
Can I make
already
my point?
said you've
Wow,
already
dude.
you've already conceded that the Mishnah, which contains portions from Hillel and Shammai, are from the 2nd century, not the 6th century, the 2nd century.
Yeah, and we don't know when those quotes are from, which of those quotes are accurate, how accurate they are. That's a known fact. And the fact that you don't believe the gospel quotes is irrelevant to this argument that I'm making against your claim about the Mishnah and the Talmud. Okay, so that's all I was saying. So bringing that up is irrelevant. That's what I said.
It's not irrelevant.
This is what you're doing. This is what you guys do. You guys are nitpickers. You're not trying to look at the big body of it. You're not trying to give.
Yes, you don't. Yes, you don't like us. You don't.
Excuse me. Interrupting
Yes,
again. Interrupting.
Yes, I would hate it too if someone was critiquing my worldview on. But guess what? You have an extraordinary claim, and of course, we are going to nitpick and critique your viewpoint. I'm not just going to accept the bullshit you say without nitpicking
again,
it.
Swearing, ridiculous. Now nitpick. I'm fine.
We're both
nitpick.
adults here. We can both swear.
What you're doing is you're not allowing a fair and precise analysis. Because as I try to make my points, you interrupt me. You bring up irrelevant subjects. You change the topic. This is how these call-in shows work. This is how this type of argumentation works. But it's not a careful analysis of the evidence. It's switching topics all over the place. That's why we've gone from Isaiah to first century Jews to all this different ground we covered.
Real quick, Alan, thank you so much for the super chat. TBS thinks the Hyksos spoke Hebrew.
I never said that. This guy's just. I have a literal list of all the wrong things Kurt says. And
Here,
it's a living document.
I'll just give you the same energy you've been giving me, Toronto. And that's my argument.
No, I never did that. You're just saying that. When I try to explain why second century and sixth century books are not a window into the first century, I explain it with reasons and evidence. You say
this guy didn't give us any. This guy didn't
nah.
give us any reason. He's just being ridiculous.
What? Yeah, okay.
I'm just doing
anyway.
it.
That's what you do. That's what you do. You bring up like Exodus 19
which was pertinent.
No, it wasn't pertinent.
It was. Yes, it's the only reason it wouldn't be pertinent is if the author of Second Isaiah wasn't Jewish.
No, because that's not what he's talking about. And then again, even there, you're trying to go from it's talking about the prophet to it's talking about the nation. You don't know which one you're talking about. That's what I was saying.
No,
I
do know what I'm talking about. It's the righteous remnant. And guess what? Fun fact, Toronto. The author of Second Isaiah is a member of the righteous remnant. So I know exactly what I'm talking about.
No, again, that's ridiculous because he's talking about a single person. He's not talking about a group. He's talking about a single person.
Except for in Isaiah 53, where it is a group.
In that one instance.
Yeah, and that one instance destroys your argument.
And no, it doesn't, because the whole text is talking about a single individual.
Why would the servant being referred to as a them?
Because that does occur. That does occur in the New Testament. Or you see this, especially in prophecy, you see this kind of like looseness with grammatical rules, pronouns, etc. You see that quite a bit.
That's not how grammar works. Not even.
Yeah, you absolutely do see that in the prophets. You absolutely do. It's ludicrous to try to claim anything else. You 100% do. 100%.
I'm sorry, Toronto. Between the two of us, who here knows how Hebrew actually works between the two of us?
I don't know. I've taken 2 years of Hebrew in seminary, so I don't know why you think you're so expert. I don't think you're some super expert in Hebrew. I seem to know it better than you do, which is crazy. Yeah. Okay. The fact that you sounds like you wasted your money, bud. It doesn't mean anything. I don't work with the Hebrew that much, but I understand the grammar.
You really should.
I understand, especially
you don't understand the grammar. Show me one valid instance when the plural they is being used to refer to a singular individual.
I can't think of one off the top of my head, but that doesn't disprove my argument. Hold on. It does occur that you have this change of grammar, tense, number, and these type of grammatical issues are often switched around. I'm gonna try to look one up, but anyway, look, my point is, when I came on here, my point was just to show you that there's good reasons to believe Jesus is the Son of God. And
I wish we could have heard some of those. Wish we could have heard some of those tonight.
You did. But what you did, instead of listening to my evidence, you kept interrupting me and cutting me off and bringing up irrelevant things, changing the topic.
If you say 10 wrong things in a row, how am I supposed to remember everything?
No, you don't even let me say say a few things. You start interrupting me immediately and just not even letting any kind of argument be set forth. I haven't been.
That's obviously not true.
The proper argument.
This is too much meta. I don't think anyone cares for the meta, but
anyway, the pronoun they is used singular subject. And
Dalton, stop interrupting him right now. I'm kidding.
I'm trying to find the thing that he was asking for. But look.
Did you find one?
No, I'm trying to find one right now. I'm looking it up.
Okay.
But,
we're not going to interrupt you. We're waiting for you to find that example real quick. Now, if you can't find an example, I'll be curious to see your reaction.
Okay.
How's everybody in the chat? I hope everybody's having a wonderful evening, maybe, depending on.
Wait, I was gonna say, Derek. Like, there's other things that are important to this discussion. Like, not just the resurrection, but also like.
Did you find an example though, bro?
I
want to let's at least.
Yeah. Well, okay. You do see this often. This case where they'll refer to like. The nation as a singular person. So, for example,
yeah, that's acceptable in Hebrew. Yeah. It doesn't work in the reverse though.
The point is the reverse. That's what
does.
Dalton's trying to point out, that you do not find they being used for an individual in the Hebrew. You will find a collective group being called the singular, but you don't get the reverse. Is the point.
Now in English that might work. We've been using the singular they them since the 1300s, but right. Biblical Hebrew, you can refer to a collective as a he, but you never see, there are no examples in Hebrew Bible of a singular person being referred to as a they or a them.
While you're looking, Gretchen Z Boots, thank you for the super chat. Apologists are funny. Their made-up God is the worst communicator in history, yet they somehow manage to be worse communicators than God. Gretchen's out here burning you, Toronto. You don't let Gretchen do that to you? Dang. Thank you for the super chat, Gretchen.
I want to see which verse from Isaiah 53 is it that they're referred to as
53 verse 8. The last 4 words of Isaiah 53 verse 8 is Mi pesha ami negat lamo. And lamo means they. Means because of the transgressions.
The people, the transgression of the people.
Yeah, because of the transgressions of my people, they were afflicted. The one who's suffering and afflicted is a they.
Hold on. No, wait.
Again, thank you, Gretchen, for the super.
Here, I can just show you the Hebrew. Let's see.
Share it. Might as well share it.
Yep. So, before we get to Isaiah 53 verse 8, I'm just going to make sure that you are going to be honest with us. So I'm going to show you some other verse examples. Psalm 2 verse 4 and Psalm 99 verse 7. Just to confirm. So Psalm chapter 2. Yeah, I'm about to. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Psalm chapter 2 verse 4 says, Yoshev b'shemayim yitzchach, he who sits in heaven laughs. Adonai yilag lamo, the Lord derides them. You agree that this is what that says?
Pardon me? Sorry, I was looking at something else.
Psalm 2:4 says, "He who sits in heaven laughs; the Lord mocks them or derides them." You agree that that's what that means?
Yeah, sure.
And notice the last word used here. It's the word lamo.
Lamo.
Lamed mim vav. We go to another example of this in action. Psalm 99 verse 7.
But with the Isaiah thing, it's differently. Lamo could be used to refer to a kind of poetic. It's used in a poetic register.
It is poetry, which is why it's also used in the Psalms, but it's poetry for it serves the same purpose as lahem in Hebrew, which is to them. So it says here that about
but you can also refer to a single person.
I would need an example.
Well, that's what I'm saying to you. Like this could be seen that way, like a poetic register.
No, it's poetic for sure. It's just a more poetic form of the word lahem, and lahem means to them. So v'chok natan lamo, and his laws he gave to them. There are 57 occurrences of lamo in the Hebrew Bible, and every time the reference is always to a multiplicity.
What about Isaiah 44:15?
Isaiah 44 verse 15 is also in reference to a multiplicity, as it's a reference to idols in the multiplicity, because even the Septuagint agrees with this, which is why if you look at the Septuagint, the authors translate all the verbs and all the nouns in the plural, because it's understood that the idol of Isaiah 44 is referring to not just one singular idol, but referring to idols.
No, it says make it a graven image. It's like a singular graven image.
Did you not hear what I just said?
Yeah, I don't care what the Septuagint says, man. It's the Greek, the Hebrew is talking about.
Why did the Jewish people seem to believe that this should be best translated in the plural?
What? The Jewish people? What are you talking about?
The authors of the material.
Who created the LXX?
I don't know. We don't know. Why are you saying they're Jewish?
Well, the translators.
Anyway, whatever their position was,
Toronto. The authors of the New Testament quote the Septuagint. Where did they get it from?
That doesn't mean that they thought everything was right. That doesn't mean they thought everything was right. That doesn't mean they thought Jews could.
I got it. The Jews were wrong. I got it. Typical Christian response.
See how your argument went from this detailed and technical analysis of the Hebrew to
you just said nah. That's all you did.
No, I didn't say nah. I said we don't know who translated the Septuagint, and we don't have to say that just because the NT authors quoted in some places that they agree with it in all places, and then we don't know that they agree with it in 44:15 because they don't quote that. So you're taking these things that are irrelevant to the argument and bringing them in because you're trying to mock me.
You really just want it to be irrelevant, but the relevance is obvious.
It's 100% irrelevant.
It's not. When I quote the LXX, which was written by Jewish people, the Jewish people.
How do you know it's written by Jewish people? How do you know that?
Because Christians didn't exist yet. Because Christians didn't exist yet.
So what? You don't know who wrote the LXX. You don't know who wrote.
Oh wait,
right?
were the Romans? Did the Romans just decide to create a Greek translation of a Jewish book?
Well, the story is that it came from the Greek, the Ptolemaic, right?
70 Jews translated it. Yeah.
By the way,
that's the story.
Kurt has a super chat. Thank you for the super chat. Is the LXX inspired? According to TBS.
Oh yeah,
I don't think so. No.
I guarantee you, Alan's not asking you or me that.
He's trying to say because he's trying to suggest that the NT quotes in certain.
Well, places. Why would he? Why would they use the scripture in Greek if they didn't think it was inspired?
You probably think some parts of it are, not all of it.
So the authors of the New Testament were quoting a pagan translation.
No, they quoted the parts that they thought were good. They probably thought that parts were good. But they don't know. It's not an authority on everything Hebrew. It's not an authority on everything.
The passages they quote are good. The passages that they just happen to leave out, those we can just say those are all pagan.
No, well, I'm just
This is
saying
just
you're
a-
not.
this is
No,
just
you don't have.
a post hoc.
Well, you're trying to suggest. Excuse me. You're
Yeah,
trying to
man.
suggest that it is authoritative, and I'm saying that that's not authoritative. It's just.
I'm saying it tells us that the Jewish people of before the Common Era,
No, you
seeing
don't.
that
Again,
the
you don't know
idols
who did
were
it.
in the. Yeah, yes, I'm not going to assume that. Okay, I'm not going to assume that it was made by like Romans or Egyptians. Like we know that it was made by Alexandrian Jews, unless you just want to like come up with a conspiracy theory about that the Septuagint was made by Satan or by some pagans, and the
No, I
authors of
never
the New
said
Testament
never
just
said
happened
that.
to
What a ridiculous
pick
trying to
a
mock me,
few of
trying to mock
the
the
good
position.
passages.
All I'm saying is that they're not authoritative. It's not authoritative. All right. So you're trying to
there's
claim it is. We have no reason to
nothing
believe
is-
it is.
Nothing. The New Testament's not authoritative. There, I can just do the same thing. I mean, this is just like it's not. This is a
Again,
big nothing.
it's not
This is a-
not
this is a-
equivalent.
it's a
Not
big- It's just
equivalent.
a big.
You're
It's just a
suggesting
big.
you're trying
It's
to make a
just a big
secular
nothing
translational
burger.
argument. You're trying to make a secular translational argument. We're not talking about the New Testament being authoritative. We're talking about
So only
your
only the
argument
passages
for the
quoted by
translation.
the authors are only the passages quoted by the authors of the New Testament from the LXX. Those are inspired. Only those passages.
No, even like look, I'm not even suggesting look. The authors of the New Testament quote the LXX in places where it's clearly different than the Hebrew. Okay. So I'm not
Okay.
suggesting that they thought that it was authoritative either. They're using it in a way like kind of like
So Isaiah
midrash,
44 is not Jewish, but is Isaiah 53 from the LXX Jewish and authoritative?
I don't know. But what I'm saying to you is this: Isaiah 44:15 we don't have to consider Isaiah 44:15 to be
Oh, for
authoritative.
fuck's sake!
You guys
What
are
are you doing? What are you talking about? What are you guys
I don't know what to do
Hilarious.
with you, Toronto.
I wish I had some popcorn out here
No,
in this freaking
You
cold
guys are
weather.
you're trying to make this claim that Isaiah 44:15 is somehow authoritatively like an expert on Hebrew or whatever. And I'm
What?
saying to
That
you
sentence,
that
that sentence doesn't
clearly,
even make sense.
there are clearly errors in the
Isaiah 44 is not an expert on Hebrew. What does that even mean?
you're trying to say that its translation is the Septuagint translation is authoritative. And I'm saying
I'm
to you
saying
that
even the Jewish
not.
people agree that the idols of Isaiah 44 are reference to a multiplicity of idols.
so there's probably dispute among them as well. Like there's the whole fact that this particular translation
Know it.
says this, and also this is not the one we don't know. We don't like the Septuagints we have are from like the 4th century, 5th century. They're not from like we don't know what is said in Christ's time. We don't know what is said before that.
So if the Hebrew Bible disagrees with the Septuagint, then we should just throw out the Septuagint in favor of the
No, I
Hebrew.
never said that. What are you talking about? What I'm saying, all I'm saying to you is this particular translation here in Isaiah 44:15 gives us an example of.
Are you just going to pick and choose when the Septuagint is acceptable?
Can I please make an argument here before you interrupt me? I'm
Would love
saying
to
that
do
Isaiah
that.
40:15 is an example. You guys were asking me for an example, and I gave you one. And you're saying
I
that,
give a
well,
rebuttal.
now you're going to this other argument about the Greek text. Well, that's another argument. I gave you the example you asked for.
It's part of the
And
argument.
that's all that is. Sorry?
It's part of the argument. You seem to be selectively choosing when the Septuagint is relevant.
No, that's not relevant. That is a
So
separate.
if you're going to disagree with the Septuagint, if you're going to disagree with the Septuagint on Isaiah 44 in favor of what the Hebrew says, can I do the same for Isaiah 7?
Look,
you can.
hate to do
fine.
it to you, Toronto. Doc Pluromanaut says, let's go in on an extended mute. Lying for the Lord is getting old. Let's move on. So
We do have another guest in the box waiting.
yeah,
that's
look,
fine. That's fine.
I have to wrap things up here soon, guys. I am out here in 40-degree North Carolina outdoor weather right now with a blanket wrapped around me. Doc, thank you again for the super chat. Toronto, it's been a blast. Let's do this again, and maybe you can bring real arguments next time.
Yeah, right. When you do your Isaiah 53 episode, let me know. I'll be there.
I will.
Yeah,
and trust me, that time's
bless.
coming. Don't worry. That
All
time's
right. God
All
bless
right.
you both. And I will pray for you both. I love you guys, okay? God
all right,
bless.
Toronto. Have a good one.
May the force be with you.
Look, AJ, I really was wanting to wrap things up. I would need to be able to see a visual of AJ. Do you want to keep going a little longer? I will have to use the restroom, but what are your thoughts?
You look. Listen, we've been going for 3 hours,
Yeah.
hours plus, and it's dark where you're at. You're wrapped in a cover. You're cold.
Dude, it's cold.
If you want to end, like, I'm fine with that. It's fine.
Okay. I hate to have a caller pop on and then we just have to try and wrap things up. But I would like to, if we can, it'd be cool to get the caller. Can I use the restroom real quick and bring the caller on and then we just go from there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So AJ, welcome to Mythvision.
What's up, man? How you doing?
What is up? I'm cold out here. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to stay alive.
Oh, that's good, man. Once you die, you'll never feel it again.
That's true. I believe
Non
that.
coro.
Embrace it.
Are you a Christian, by the way, AJ?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Okay, AJ, I'm gonna come right back, and you and Dalton are gonna be at each other's throats. Hopefully, I'm kidding. No, easy. If you would, why should we become Christians? If you don't mind, and I'll come back and get the super chats and stuff. I just got to use the restroom real quick.
Okay.
What's up, AJ?
What's up, man? How you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. What about you, brother?
Awesome. I'm doing good. Can't complain. I just got off work a little bit ago and saw this stream, so I figured I'd jump on and give my 2
Absolutely.
cents.
So, AJ, why should I become a Christian? I used to be a Christian. I'm not anymore. So why should I return to the fold?
Okay, yeah. So I'll try to like lay out a simple argument, trying to be sort of as basic as possible. I think there's kind of an accumulative case, and it just depends on what we may agree on. So basically, what I would aim at is there is evidence for Christianity to be grounded in real history, and Christianity also has practicality to it, and it does serve a purpose that I would say that maybe an agnostic or atheistic view would not be able to serve, such as maybe hope and mainly hope for a future life and a spiritual life, and
All
so it'd
right.
be surrounded around those. Yeah.
I'll just tell you that I personally I don't care about the usefulness of Christianity. I only care about the question of whether or not it's true.
Right. Yeah. So okay. So I would agree that I can't prove Christianity to be true. I think there's evidence to suggest that it could be grounded in true history. Now, I'm not sure how you may view the so-called minimal facts theory. Now, when I
Gary
do sort of,
Habermas?
I know that he's been the main one that has pushed it. When I sort of look at, because what I try to do is try to see like, okay, what are scholars agreeing on? What are things that we can agree are, probably true? And when they sort of lay out these like minimal facts, from what I've researched, if we are able to grant that there is a possibility of the so-called supernatural or miracles, the best explanation is going to be that Jesus actually rose from the dead. And so if this is actually grounded in history, then I would say that sort of points to the truthfulness of overall Christianity. Maybe not every single detail in the Bible, but Christianity as a whole.
All right, let's go through those minimal facts, and then you list the first one. I'll tell you if I agree or disagree with it, and if I agree, we can just move on to until we find a point where there is disagreement.
Okay, so I believe the minimal facts are that Jesus actually was crucified. He did die. Whether he was buried in a tomb is up for debate. But later, but he was dead, and then later on, his disciples believed that he had rose from the dead, and this sort of led to the beginning movement of Christianity.
I mean, yeah, I agree. My hypothesis on this, quite simply, is that Jesus died. Peter experienced a bereavement hallucination, and the rest is a matter of collective delusion and religious ecstasy.
Okay, so you're saying it started with one person sort of illusion, or what did you call it? I'm sorry. The
Hallucinating.
hallucination, and then sort of he's like spreading this gospel, and people just believe him basically. So it's not,
Yeah,
you don't
well,
have to deal with the mass sort of hallucination theory.
no, yeah, there's no mass hallucination. It would start with, like, we know that 30 to 60% of grieving individuals experience bereavement hallucinations, especially in cultures where those things are not negatively looked at. And if you have like polyphasic cultures, and so we're a monophasic culture. In other words, we see that what we consider real to be the waking world, and we don't give dreams and whatnot the same like level of credibility. But for polyphasic cultures like ancient Israel, if you have a hallucination, it's not that they don't have even a word for hallucination. They don't know it as like mental illness or something like that. They
Hmm.
think, oh, I'm seeing this person. So for Peter, the only options would be either Jesus is dead and that he's a spirit, in which case God abandoned him to death, or cognitive dissonance kicks in and God is here. God has vindicated Jesus. He's resurrected from the dead. And we've even seen this same exact thing happen in modern world with have you ever heard of the Rebbe?
No.
So the Rebbe was a prominent rabbinic leader in Chabad, Lubavitch Judaism in the 20th century. In fact, there are a lot of people who thought perhaps maybe the Rebbe was the Mashiach, the Messiah of Israel.
Hmm.
And then he died. He got sick. Ironically enough, they attributed Isaiah 53 to him. And then after he died, a lot of people stopped believing, but there are to this day still a core within Chabad who believe that the Rebbe is the Messiah and have even claimed that he has appeared to them and that he never really died or that he resurrected and that he will return again.
Okay. So okay, I got you. And then when it comes to like the Peter situation, may I ask why is it you only think Peter is the one that had the vision?
Yeah,
Because if
Paul.
I'm, yeah, good.
Yeah, when Paul gives us a description of the people that Jesus appeared to, Peter is the first one on that list. And I think it's more likely that only that lesser people would experience full-on hallucinations, and that more people would experience just collective delusion, as that seems to be the pattern that we see in other examples of this.
Okay. And then okay, and then okay. I mean, I've never really listened to the, I mean, I've heard ironically enough, I think our inspiring philosophy was talking about this topic today, but I don't have like enough sort of experience with both sides of the argument to sort of say which way or the other. From what I understood as part of the minimal facts was that it was multiple people were claiming that Jesus had rose from the dead, and so
Yeah, all that's required for that. And so after Peter has his like bereavement hallucination, he goes to the rest of the 12 and tells them like of what he has seen. And they already have a belief that he's the Messiah. And then there's also a belief within Judaism that in the last days comes the resurrection of the dead. Um, so what they would do is they would do what most Jewish people would do in this instance. They would fast, they would pray, they would do all of these ritual activities that would um, probably result in them feeling Jesus's presence with them in the room. They have a feeling, which I've felt that too when I was like in a evangelical Christian and worshipped. I thought I felt Jesus's presence literally in the room with me. They
Mhm.
all they need to do is have that experience to feel like Jesus has appeared to them.
Okay, and then when you were explaining the Peter situation, you're saying part of the reason why you believe that he thinks that he saw Christ was like a bereavement situation, right?
Yeah. 30 to
So
60% of grieving individuals experience bereavement hallucinations, especially in
right
cultures where these are more accepted.
now, when it does come to this situation, like how connected are these people? Because I mean, at least according to the New Testament, uh, I think Peter would have only known Jesus for about 3 years. So I don't know like how deep his emotions would be for someone you just know him for 3 years.
Well, I have a friend that I've only known for 2 years, and I can guarantee you and this is someone that I've only even met in person once, and I am deeply attached to this individual. And with regards to this is 3 years, and probably as a rabbi disciple sort of dynamic is occurring, there is a constant exposure to Jesus of Nazareth. In fact, the entire job of the Talmud, the student, is to emulate the actions and of his rabbi, his teacher, his master. So Jesus would be considered an attachment figure.
Right. And okay, so you is there any examples maybe of maybe in studies where where somebody has known somebody for a short time and they are and they experience this sort of height of emotion that does sort of give this experience to them? Because I definitely don't want to say, I'm not going to say somebody can't have a sort of deep compassion or sort of connection to somebody within 3 years,
Uh-huh.
but but is there any
Uh,
sort of studies that would suggest this would go as far as like a hallucination
I don't know if we have any examples of someone who's known someone for only 3 years, but the time, the amount of
or a short
time that
time?
someone, yeah, the amount of time that someone knows another individual who passes away, especially violently, isn't really all that significant. All that's really matters is how attached these individuals were, how much of a relationship did they have, and that's not something that you can really know how well someone is attached to another individual after 3 years.
Okay.
Like
I
Okay.
do have a good.
take for example, someone brought this up. It's an important one, I think. Vesper says people are still hallucinating Elvis being alive. Many people who never met him were just fans of the guy himself. Now that claims he has famous, obvious reputation, but nonetheless, you can still have people who have obviously seen Jesus as an important figure. I think even Rabbi Tovia Singer, when I interviewed him, told me about a Christian woman who believed one of the pastors at her mega church in the Philippines or something, that she had like lunch or dinner or breakfast with him or something after he was dead. So like there's just all sorts of examples of this that could be the case. This is just one path, by the way. I like
Yeah.
some of the paths that I do take on my channel are not always the consensus. Mind you, the consensus is also made up by many people who are in the religion. They are made up of believers. So there's a tendency, I think, of course, to factor in that some of these people are going to hold to what the text seem to be saying and believe them. There's a minority of people who question the authenticity of 1 Corinthians 15 as if it wasn't an interpolation. So there's all sorts of different interesting things. We're dealing with an ancient text that says something, and some have, few have hypothesized that this entire section is interpolated. I also like entertaining some of the ideas by Richard C. Miller, who looks to other Greco-Roman cults of the time using a heuristic study and looking and saying, hey, you notice there's a lot of people who are coming forward swearing that they witnessed the Caesars ascending to heaven in the imperial cult, the Roman imperial cult. And they're eyewitnesses. They claim that they saw these things. Now, we can't interview them. There's no way to like go, hey, what's going on in that head of yours? Or like, what
Right.
really is the case? We don't know, but we have alternative cults that are around that are claiming to be witnesses of this. And even this gets brought up by Celsus, the critic of Christianity. When he's responding back to Christians, he says, you guys aren't unique in your eyewitness claims. Justin Martyr says the same thing. We believe nothing different. And then he gives this list of all these demigods that Christians have parallels with in the Greco-Roman world. And one of them is that they claim the Caesar has ascended to heaven in an apotheosis. The eyewitnesses, he literally says, eyewitnesses claim they see him ascend to heaven. This is not just Jesus, but this is the Greco-Roman world. And so I go down the mythic path too and entertain the idea that, cults fabricate stuff. They invent stuff. I'm not saying that's what this is. I'm simply saying there are alternative paths we can take on trying to assess this information the same way I
Right.
would look at Mormonism. I wouldn't trust that Joseph Smith really did have golden plates or really did, you know, that he wasn't making up stuff. But then someone might go, but was he lying about everything? And when you ask historians, they say, no, he wasn't. But he was a good bullshitter. And sometimes good bullshitters are also people who believe their own bullshit. And so I don't know what the truth
For
is.
real.
I mean, look, I'm not saying that that's what, look, we're doing detective
got you.
work. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying, AJ? We're not
No,
like,
I got you.
we don't know. We don't have a time machine, right? But when we
Mhm.
do, we try to take the best scientific, psychological alternatives that we know from other cults and stuff and go, what's more likely? This one happened and it is true, or, you know, maybe it's like the others as well. And maybe there's some differences too. Like for us, we're just not persuaded of the conclusion of this one. You know what I mean? And we're looking at all of them and going, hey, there's a lot of claims out there. There's a lot of testimonies out there. There's a lot of all that. Sorry if I
Right.
hogged too much time, Dalton, but I just kind of
No,
wanted
you
to
can.
like give a
No,
few
you're fine,
alternatives.
Brian.
So
In
if I-
fact, real quick, I just had a recommendation on a text for people to look at for more information on this topic of bereavement hallucination in regards to the resurrection appearances. There's a paper by Dr. Stephen H. Smith called "Exploring the Role of Bereavement Hallucinations in Early Christian Resurrection Beliefs," and it's a good lengthy paper, but it goes into like the role, how bereavement hallucination works, how collective delusions work, and how those could have played a role in the post-resurrection appearances of 1 Corinthians 15.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that would be the
Thank-
majority. The consensus view right now with scholarship is that at the end of the day, there was an experience people had, but they would understand the First Corinthians passage to be more about visionary experiences. And it doesn't really give us too much information about those visionary experiences and how that might have taken place. For all we know, these men may have went to sleep and had dreams, and dreams were often considered visionary as well in that time. You have to go to the Gospels, which are later, to try and account inner room kind of experiences. And if they do reflect a memory that guys were in a room in kind of a trance-like praying state or something like that, and then had experiences, who knows? There's all sorts of strange movements out there that have experiences. And I just say strange, not to use it in a derogatory term, but like there are other movements out there that have ecstatic experiences and claim that they see things and all that kind of stuff that doesn't move the needle for me. But I do like entertaining those mythical as well. And I look to Joseph Smith for a good example of that, like people who are willing to make up stuff, but people go, but what were their motives? And I interviewed a scholar yesterday who we were talking about the Gospels. He's an expert on the Gospels, and he also knows the second century church really well. And he brings up how they were getting money. A lot of these apostle type, these people who claim to be important apostolic figures were going and gathering money. This was an issue in the early church, and a lot of these communities were trying to gain income. And you can't, I mean, while they're the ones writing it, all we have is their writings. So with Joseph Smith, if all we had was Mormonism in their writings, you might find some things fishy, but you probably aren't going to find very negative, too much negative PR. But we have writings from people in the cult that left. We have writings from people in the next towns over who knew Joseph Smith, knew the Mormons. They had a lot of scathing things to say from the outside. All we have is New Testament material. We don't get a Lucian of Samosata or some external critic at the time giving us, what happened. And I wish we did, because then we could get a little closer, I think, to what happened.
Real quick, just got to respond to this one. Williams, the theory of group hallucinations have been long dismissed by New Testament historians, and that includes secular scholars and Cell as long back as the 20th century even. Well, no one here is proposing group hallucination. We're proposing what's called collective delusion, which is not the same thing. In my hypothesis, only one person has a hallucination, and that's Peter. No one else does have a hallucination.
Yeah, that would be Apologia, I think, also proposes this kind of model, I believe.
Does he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, yeah, Inspired Philosophy, and somebody else in psychology was reviewing one of his videos today. So
I can tell you this, my final thing I'll say, AJ, and I want to let you have final piece because I do not want to get sick. I am out here in the cold in North Carolina. Is
I got you.
for me, and this is just me, any natural explanation that is plausible would make more sense to me than the real miraculous one for me. And I'm just saying because I'm already really skeptical. Okay. But I would apply this same skepticism to Islam. I would apply to every religion in the world, including the demigods that I'm mentioning, or any cult, any religion. I would just have a high threshold of critical, skeptical thought about it, and every plausible explanation that is even possible is more likely to me than he really rose from the dead. From psychological to cults did this, and we have comparisons to other cults that manufactured legends about their figures, all this kinds of stuff. Like all of that seems more likely to me. And I'm just being honest as a human being to another human being. That's how I feel about it. And I would equally apply it to every religion in the world.
Okay. Yeah. No. Okay. Cool. I got you. And yeah, I'll try to. I'll just say this, and then like maybe another time we
Sure,
could
sure.
chat. I'm sorry, I came towards the end. Um, so okay, so like when I am sort of reviewing these things, I was born a Christian and grew up a Christian, so I know I have a bias. But I do I try at least to, it's like appeal to scholarship and not so I try not to just like be all the way one way. I do want to involve scholarship. I do have faith, and I do have like miracle. I believe that miracles can happen. I don't see why they couldn't, but maybe that's just a study situation or whatever. So at least what I was telling the Bible guy earlier, one of my reasons why I believe that people should be Christian or at least support Christianity is going to be sort of like a cumulative case, and we're going to probably disagree on the steps or some of these different things. So like the reliability of the New Testament, how reliable it could be, what things you could actually take that are going to be reliable, and then you have like the movement actually coming to fruition. And then throughout the centuries, you even have some claimed miracles that have happened. You have some more well documented miracles, so called miracles, that are vetted by third parties, such as I'm sure you're aware of, like Zaytun or Fatima, things of this situation. So there does seem to be a multitude of things that if I was like in a court and I would say, okay, on this table I could at least put it as a supporting evidence, and not obviously wouldn't draw the conclusion, and then on the other table it just wouldn't be evidence at all. There does seem to be there does seem to be a multitude of supporting evidences that would suggest that Christianity has a good probability of being grounded in true history. And I think that some of these like miracles, such as the Fatima and the Zaytun situation, sort of helps bolster that argument. And especially because those things were witnessed by a mass group of people. There's a and when I looked, and this could be wrong, but when I did look at like ChatGPT or AI, and I asked it sort of um what was it? It was basically like making a chart of all these claims that religions make as far as their miraculous claims, and then how many of them been like sort of vetted. And the result that at least came up was that Christianity does have like a wide, like a decent amount of them, and overwhelmingly more than other religious. And just because other religions are false wouldn't make Christianity true, but it just seems to suggest that there there are sort of miraculous supporting evidences for Christianity, and and that was like sort of my main sort of pitch, if you will.
The irony. I'm gonna make this real quick so that Derek can go
Oh,
because
I'm
he's
sorry.
cold.
Can I
Look at
add one more
look.
thing?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just want to add one more quick thing. Um, the hope is not a reason to believe in a religion. But I think that hope has like a very important place, and the main reason why I would say that is because we are human, and the idea that, and again, this doesn't make it true, but the idea that somebody will never see their loved ones again, and this sort of is going to have a negative effect on the human psyche, um would seem to suggest that hope is something that is gonna sort of work in my favor. At least something we could put on the table, and it's a very important thing because of like, if I'm sorry, I'm being long. I'm trying to wrap it up. If like, if from what I understood is like dogs don't have this idea that if when my human is dying, I'm never gonna see him again. But it doesn't like destroy their psyche. Whereas like humans will have this mental breakdown if there isn't sort of some hope to some extent. And I feel like that being a reality sort of does possibly attest to something, beyond this.
So
Hopefully that makes sense.
I'll say this just to end and to wrap things up. One, it's ironic because I use Fatima all the time as evidence against 1 Corinthians 15 because we do have examples of people who were present at Fatima who saw nothing. Also, scientifically speaking, we know for a fact the sun did not dance. It would seem like this. Some people report having seen different things. So these are examples of why Fatima is a perfect example of why 1 Corinthians 15 isn't reliable. And in regards to mourning, dogs do mourn and grieve for the deaths of their owners, and to a point that it can even become very negative for their health. Often even going as far as starving themselves and whatnot. It's really sad. But that's all I want to say. That's it.
I just want to say, Herbie Shine, thanks for the super chat. I wasn't expecting a Dalt Canton, the cowboy hat wearing Bible debunking chap live this week. So this is a surprise to see a hoorah. Yeah, I guess AJ, my final comment on that too. I agree with what Dalton said. I have not studied Zoltan enough. I have not studied those inside out. I promised Cameron Bertuzzi that I would make a critical video response to these miracle claims that are there. I am not denying that they're claims, and that if you take a cumulative approach, you would say, hey, I've got all this data that backs up, my religion has all these things, and there are other religions that have them. I haven't looked at the statistics on comparisons of like how many miraculous claims from cultures are there, how many more. I mean, we know Christians make up most of the world's population, so it's almost unfortunate if you were trying to do this statistically that, of course, there's probably going to be more miracle claims coming from a religion that has more people believing in it. Eventually, maybe Islam takes that approach and they end up doing it. I know that there are lots of miracles in the ancient world by Asclepius in the Greco-Roman world that we have inscriptions and writings about, but because the cult finally went, I would say, practically extinct, I think some of the ideas were adopted into Christianity, but it went extinct in its own right. That's unfortunate to be able to study it as a case study in comparison to Christianity in the modern era. The dog thing too, the other added part I would just say to Dalton's point, because we all know dogs have mourned the death of their children, their moms, their dads, any other dog, but also their owner, the human that takes care of them. Is that it? Even if they don't have the, let's say, cognition to think beforehand that one day death is coming and I will miss them like we might have, once they die, they experience that same mourning we do once we lose a loved one. So The only difference might be that we are able to cognitively be aware that the time is approaching. But then again, we can't read a dog's mind and communicate with them to know that they aren't possibly thinking about this to some. I don't know what their brains are thinking. Maybe they do think about this. Maybe I'm wrong in even bringing that up. And dogs might actually be aware of it because they've seen 2 or 3 cases in their own life, and they know that this might be something that they might approach, or, you know, someone else that they love dearly might do it again through that trauma. I don't know, and I'm no expert on these things at all. But again, I think I think it's fair to make a cumulative case for Christianity. And I think it's fair that we dissect piece by piece those arguments in order to show why, you know, it doesn't add up in our minds. So it's just a different approach. And someone like Inspiring Philosophy, I don't know if you've seen the beef back in the day. Me and him had beef. We're cool again. Me and Michael Jones, he's supposed to meet me this summer. And I imagine I'm probably going to ask him about the Islamic dilemma on camera and just say, hey, can we put our differences aside for this episode and let's talk about the Islamic dilemma, because me and him obviously don't agree on Christianity. But yeah, I've rambled enough.
Can I ask you one last question? I just want your thoughts on this. If this is actually true, so like assuming atheism, I don't know are you like atheist or agnostic?
I'm an atheist in terms of there being, I don't believe there's a
No
God. I'm
Okay.
agnostic on knowledge. I mean, clearly, like, it's a knowledge claim, but that's the way I'm defining agnosticism there. But
Okay.
I'm an atheist. I don't believe there's a God. Yeah.
Okay, so and this may not actually matter. But and again, maybe my conclusions are not even true. So my assumption is that atheism, the adoption of an atheistic worldview on a mass scale is, I believe, and again, probably biased. I believe possibly detrimental. Possibly detrimental in the sense that it doesn't have survivability. I don't think that a atheistic community has the sort of characteristic backbones that are required for the progression of communities. So like the idea of like and mainly, and maybe this is like a modernity thing, because my assumption is that atheistic community is going to be mainly worried about their own sort of desires, and not to say that everybody is like hedonistic, but it, like, even if it's like, you know, I don't want to have a ton of kids because it's you know, it's just not economically probable for me. And if I'm not mistaken, it has been shown that atheists have less kids, and they are
But that's
sort
not
of
a
like,
bad thing though. That's responsible. That's
no,
responsibility.
I'm saying like like they're not having enough to sort of what they say, like, oh, you got to have this many kids to sort of sustain a population, and it doesn't seem that they have that sustainability.
We got like 8 people going on 9 billion people. I think society will be fine. And if it really ever gets to that point where we need more people, I'm sure we can come up with a solution.
Well, I guess the main crux of my argument is like,
actually, there is a way to help with this.
produces-
There is a way to help fix this. Get rid of capitalism and go full communist, and then you don't have to worry about not being able to afford raising kids in the household. There you go.
But hypothetically, if atheism produces an unsustainable sort of model, then even like according to evolution, why would this be the case? Because like if evolution is like, hey, it's survivability, then sort of like, why would
But
it
it's not
produce-
atheism. I would argue it's not. I would argue it's not atheism that's producing this. It's capitalism that's producing
Oh, okay.
this desire to not have offspring. It's all because of the fact that you quite clearly just can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much there too. I think a future episode where, you know, you have more time and I'm not in a popsicle situation here.
Yeah,
We can dive
man.
a little deeper. No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in what you said, but Really appreciate you calling, AJ. I hope to see you in the future.
Yeah, got one, and thank you guys.
Thank you.
And yeah, hopefully you guys will see you soon. And I hope I'm looking forward to like you and Inspiring Philosophy having more conversations, or even some of the scholars, because Inspiring Philosophy, I do watch him a lot,
Yeah.
and I at least like that he does sort of not just do like apologetics. He does try to deal with scholarship, and so, and I know that a lot of your channel is very scholarly oriented, which I appreciate. I mainly watch mostly like the Islamic videos,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I might watch some Christian here and there. But I'm looking forward to you or some of the scholars you bring on speaking to Inspiring Philosophy and others of the like. So
Sounds good. Thank you,
thank you,
AJ.
man.
All
You have
right.
a good
Drive
rest of your
safe.
day, man.
You too.
Yes, sir. Have a good day.
All right. Bye. Awesome. Hey, Jesuit Slayer says Christ is Belial book thesis too scary for you guys. I missed this super chat. I guess I went to go pee and came right back and then forgot to get it. But I don't know about this Christ is Belial book thesis. Sounds too scary for us, though. You know what I mean?
I mean, they're making the claim that Jesus and Satan are the same figure. I mean, clearly, when we look at the New Testament, Paul mentions Belial as being someone different than Jesus. So I don't think there's any legs to stand on this idea. I think it's a fun. Fan fiction, but it's not what the early Christians believed.
Well, thank you, Jesuit Slayer, for, I guess, plugging your book. I'm not sure. I don't know if that's your book or not. Thank you so much. Nick George Carvid said, why'd you skip the super chat from Jesuit Slayer? Probably because I went to go use the restroom and came back and we were in the middle of dialogue. I tried, by the way, Dalton, just as we're wrapping up, and any of the faithful followers who've stuck out to the end here, I tried my best to try and get the super chats and address them, even in the heat of your debates. You notice that? I'm like, hey, super chats are so. Okay, keep going. Like, I didn't want to leave anybody hanging. That's what I was trying to do here. But yeah, so I didn't intentionally skip it, other than just trying not to, in the middle of an argument, interrupt. Apologetics, thank you for the super chat, the 5. I really appreciate that support. And then who's going to carry the boats? Thank you for the super chat. I was TBS's biggest fan until now. Thank you. Well, thank you.
Happy to help.
Yeah, I want to have you give your final assessment, I guess. What are your...
Well, I'm glad we got to end the night on AJ. It was a good conversation. Toronto was interesting. Certainly, this is just quite typical of apologetics, is that quite a bit of that was just a big old nut burger. I guess I got to say to that. I think we cooked them pretty good. I can't wait to see the clip on that.
Yeah.
Can I do a quick plug?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so everyone, I recently put out a video called let me see, I got it right here. Typology Debunked: Why Typology is Not a Convincing Argument for Christianity. Everyone, if you can please go like the video, share
It's
it.
public.
Lots
It's
of
public.
engagement.
Hold on.
It's public.
Let's share it. I didn't realize, by the way, typology is something I had a conversation with Dale Allison recently about, because he had a book on this. And I find it fascinating to see the literary typology, sharing it in the chat. I think everybody, for some reason, when I comment, it also comments on yours. I guess it's because we're linked here.
You have it set to at the. I noticed that too. You have it set to all at the bottom.
Oh,
and that's I had to set mine just to the Bible guy because I was getting the same thing going on.
crap! I didn't realize that. Sorry, everybody.
That's fine. I see all. It's been posted multiple times now. That's all good.
Well, if you're on Mythvision and you don't know, you should go check out, subscribe to Dalton's YouTube channel, The Bible Guy. Sorry.
Yeah, Bible Man's my father.
Yeah, right here, YouTube channel, The Bible Guy. Go subscribe. Let's get him over 6K subscribers. Hopefully, we can get him there like within the next day. I'd like to see you blow up on YouTube. You're doing a lot of stuff in a lot of areas. I have to watch that myself. It's only 7 minutes and 25 seconds. So I'm going to watch that as soon as I get off of here and go get some dinner, warm up inside. If you're watching from YouTube or from Mythvision, please go subscribe to Dalton. Check him out. Support what he's doing. Show him some love. He did this last minute. I harassed him and begged him, come on, man, let's do a stream. And Dalton's like, I'm game. So we got a thumbnail thrown up, did the live stream.
I kid you not. You were my alarm today. I woke up from your phone call. That's why.
That's awesome. You guys made me free from this. Who's going to carry the boats? Well, thank you so much. I'm glad we helped. Also, Apologetics also sent another $1 super chat. Thank you. Again, his YouTube channel is linked in the description of this video on Mythvision, and I'll send you the collab invite here shortly, Dalton. Thank you for the time. I tried not to interrupt in the heated exchanges you were having. It was a fun time with you.
It was fun. I mean, like I said, I took the week off for my mental health, but it turns out just 3 days of not debating in Bible guy years is like a whole month. So like it felt like it's only been 3 days. Holy shit. So, you know,
Right.
Just so everyone knows, we will get back to streaming regularly this Sunday, March 22nd. So keep an eye.
There you go. Thank you so much, man. And thank you everybody in the chat. We really appreciate you. Hit the like, share, comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And yeah, until next time, we'll see you then. Peace.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.